And welcome into MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Wednesday evening. We're going to talk a lot about MLB trades. We're going to talk about the trade deadline. We're also getting into some power rankings as well. So be sure to stick around to the end of the video for our updated weekly power rankings. There's a lot to get into, starting with Sandy Alcantara. Alcantara took the start today anyway for the Miami Marlins and got a video dropping tomorrow about how the Chicago Cubs, the New York Mets, and the Los Angeles Dodgers are all pursuing the starting pitcher. Now, understand that before today's start, he had an ERA of about 7.01. That ERA didn't go down today. That actually went up. He gave up 6 earned runs in a little over 4 innings, and it was not a pretty outing for Alcantara. This is not going to deter from some of those teams trying to pursue him at the deadline. The one thing it will make sure is the price will be far lower than what we expected it to be, say, even 3-4 months ago, 6-7 months ago when we were in the offseason. That price was significantly higher. With the performance on the field, that price has just gone through the floor. And the Marlins, who entered this season in the thought process of trying to sell here at the deadline, they might just have to sell low on Alcantara. Now, will they move him? That remains to be seen. I'm curious to see what the long-term decision will be around the Miami Marlins. Do they hold on to Alcantara, hope he can shake it off and become the ace that we expected him to be at the start of the season? Or do the Marlins finally pull the ripcord on this one and say it doesn't look like it's getting better, which I honestly don't think it is. I think this is who Alcantara is right now. The mechanics just are all over the place, and I was watching him play against Cincinnati today. His arm slot anyway was just all over the place. And the commentary team for both teams, I was watching it through the MLB.TV app, and I was tuning into both broadcasts anyway. And both broadcasts were pointing out how his locations were very, very poor. He was spotting up the fastball very poorly. The get me over slider early in the count was getting hammered, and those kinds of things are just unforgivable at the major league level. And I don't see those kinds of things changing. He just hasn't changed the style of pitcher that he is. He was a guy that was a significant beneficiary of the shift anyway. That has since gone away, and nobody has been hurt worse on the pitching side of things by the loss of the shift than Sandy Alcantara. That being said, he still is a starting pitcher who gave the Marlins all of those innings en route to winning a Cy Young. He is still the same starting pitcher who has that in him to who may once again find that type of form. If he gets his mechanics down a little bit more consistently, if he's gets more time away from surgery, those kinds of things. All those are hope, could, maybe, should, kind of. None of those are sure things though. And when you're looking at Sandy Alcantara, the biggest name for me as far as an ace available at this deadline, I think there's a lot more in the name than there is value on the field, especially when you consider the ERA over 7 just ain't getting it done. Now, not just Sandy Alcantara is not the only player that's on the market. Got another video coming out tomorrow about Josh Naylor and how he is going to be pursued by several teams during this trade deadline season. Diamondbacks are not saying die on this season. They're still trying to compete. I imagine if they do trade Naylor, it's going to be for long-term pieces that both help them this season in their pursuit of a wild card spot and in years going forward. Because he's an expiring deal heading towards free agency is the primary reason why I think he could be had at this year's deadline. Same thing goes for Eugenio Suarez. Another video coming out about him on Friday. So be sure to check out both of those videos in the next couple of days. But for Naylor, a couple of teams have kind of kicked the tires on him recently. We've known about the Rangers for the better part of about 3-4 weeks now. That's been the one team that's been eyeballed as the most likely suitor for him. With the disappointing season so far for Jake Berger, nothing out of the DH spot outside of Josh Smith whenever he's not playing in the field anyway. But they were getting nothing out of Jock Peterson. This is a team that needed some power in the lineup. That's why they made the decisions they made in the offseason, and they really haven't gotten the power that they need. So going to Arizona, getting one of Suarez or Naylor makes a lot of sense for the Rangers. But two other teams have since popped up in just the last 48 hours. The Seattle Mariners and the Boston Red Sox. Boston was in the news for quite a few different articles today, and we'll touch on a bunch of those. But as far as Naylor goes, Seattle just needs to get more consistent offense there. I think we're starting to see the fallback a little bit of this team with that offense kind of coming back down to earth. They have all the prospects in the world to go after whoever they want at this year's deadline. They can go after a long-term asset if they want it, if they want to. Somebody who's more proven with a whole lot more salary to come. Those kinds of things. Those are things Seattle could try to do. Some out-of-the-box types of a move. But the more typical moves we've seen them do in years past is go for guys who are rentals. The acquisition cost is not too high, and I think there could be a trade fit between the two teams. The Boston Red Sox, they've needed a first baseman for the majority of the year, especially after the injury to their own first baseman. The trade of Rafi Devers increased the need for another bat in that lineup. They have a plethora of them in the outfield. Maybe they transition one of those guys over to first base just to kind of get playing time for them all, but they've been named as a suitor for Josh Naylor here at the deadline. They're also looking at starting pitching. The Boston Red Sox are supposedly looking at Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins. Honestly, who wouldn't at this point? Throwing to a 2.76 ERA through 18 games, 17 starts on the year. Video coming out on him on Friday, so be sure to join us. And here at the Upside, hit that like and subscribe. That way when the video does come out, you guys can check it out here at the Upside. But Joe Ryan just got named to the American League All-Star team as a replacement for Hunter Brown. Honestly, I thought he was one of the snubs that should have gotten in off the first ballot anyway, but he ultimately gets into the All-Star game there in Atlanta. Good acknowledgement for what he's done so far this year. For Boston, this would be about them trying to get long-term starting pitching in there. Walker Buehler, of course, only signed a one-year deal. They made the trade for Garrett Crochet. They wanted to build this rotation out quite a bit. And the pitching has been hit and miss at times this year for them, which is why Joe Ryan coming in would certainly be a boost, not only for this season, but for the next couple of seasons as well. He's under contract, not just this year, but 2 more seasons after. The price on him is exceedingly high. If you guys are familiar with baseball trade value, the surplus value on him is around 70. Just for reference, Jarren Duran, one of the names that's available in that Red Sox outfield, or at least rumored to be available, is only at 40. So it would cost a pretty penny anyway if Boston wanted to go after him. John Paul Morosi, anyway, linked the two teams as being a kind of a natural fit for a trade here. Duran really available, consistently available every day. Minnesota's had difficulty having players available in their outfield. Looking at Byron Buxton, who's having a great year. But again, I was watching on MLB.TV. In his first at bat of the game, got hit in the hand and was pulled for a pinch hitter in the second inning because he got hit in the hand by a pitch. We'll see how that injury plays out, if it's just a couple of games he misses or if he's got a broken bone, if he's going to miss extended time. But for a guy having a career year for Minnesota, really tough to see. I thought he was going to be one of the key bats available at this year's deadline that nobody was talking about, and he still very well may be, but a pitch, hit by pitch to the hand certainly does throw some through some obstacles in the way of a trade there. Now, as far as the Boston Red Sox go, they've been listed in a number of different trade rumors today. Not just Josh Naylor, not just Joe Ryan anyway, but also for Alex Bregman. Now, we've been talking about this move specifically for about 2 weeks here at the Upside. You're welcome to check out any of our videos here where we were kind of one of the first sites to really notice how the situation in Boston after the trade for Rafi Devers was anything but settled. Sure, they had long-term money available with Devers now out the window, but they hadn't really come to an agreement or looked like they were getting close to an agreement yet with Alex Bregman on a long-term deal. Now, of course, he's got a player option for this year, got a player option after the next year as well. So he's got 2 more player options to go. And, of course, he could just stay in Boston for those years, play out his contract, and then hit free agency after that. Highly unlikely for a player of his caliber to do that, especially with the offensive numbers he was putting up in Boston before the injury. He is expected back relatively soon for Boston, which is exactly what that team really needs. This is a team that's, kind of getting the soft part of their schedule right now. They're playing the Rockies and appropriately kind of trampling them. But the Red Sox trade deadline decisions, I believe, will be made after the All-Star break. That's when they face 3 tough series against playoff opponents. If they go, say, 500 in those games, I think they will probably buy at the deadline or at the very least stand pat. Very unlikely they would sell at that point. However, they've had their struggles against teams above 500 this year, and I'm curious to see, how they respond to adversity in the second half. When the All-Star break is over, are they really ready to hit the ground running, or is this a team that falters out of the gate? They get close to the trade deadline, they panic, and then they trade away guys that aren't nailed down for whatever they can get for them. I think they're in that kind of a boat that's not going to be sitting around waiting, for the deadline to come and go. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be looking at their own situation, figuring out where they stand first, and then act accordingly after. I don't think they're going to be over the moon for any of these top pieces out there. Joe Ryan might be the one exception because he's controllable past this year, but Boston could be a very important team at this year's trade deadline because they could both buy a bunch and they could sell a bunch as well. Aroldis Chapman having a career year at the back of that bullpen as a closer would be a great asset for somebody at the deadline as well. But those are some of your headlines anyway coming out of Boston today. The Texas Rangers made a little bit of news anyway with some of the rumors heading around them. We talked a little bit about Josh Naylor as well. But the Rangers, look like they might be heading towards a sell mode after they dropped a couple of games anyway in San Diego. They then have a great game last night against the LA Angels. What kind of a team is this? Is this a team that's ready to buy and push the chips to the middle? That seems to be what the organization is putting forward with Bruce Bochy as a manager and Chris Young as the president of baseball ops, is that's what they want to do. But I'm curious to see if they have the wherewithal to add at the deadline or if they just stand pat. I could very much see them standing pat with the group that they have right now because they don't have much in the way of trade assets unless they really take out what's left of the upper levels of their minor league system, or B, trade away one of their best assets, being Sebastian Walcott or even Wyatt Langford. I kind of went to a deep dive today anyway just to see what the assets look like for the Rangers, and we'll get into some of those today. But it's very curious to see which direction they decide to go. If they're committed to winning this year, which they certainly have the pitching and the bullpen so far to do it, their offense is showing signs of life. The catching has been atrocious offensively all season long. But over the last 15 games or so, it's starting to wake up a little bit. We're starting to see hitters like Corey Seager get hot. Adolis Garcia, anyways, had his hot and cold stretches this season. Certainly seems to have pulled himself out of a nosedive that he was in the first month or so of the season. Evan Carter looks like one of the most productive hitters in the lineup for this team. That's saying something, or that's not saying a lot anyway, given the production that they've gotten all year long. But he's proven to be a more consistent bat in the middle of that lineup than, say, a guy like Wyatt Langford. You look at Josh Smith, who absolutely was an all-star snub. I'm kind of surprised he wasn't named as a replacement there, but Detroit instead got Zach McKinstry in there as a replacement for Jeremy Pena. I thought that would have been a spot for a Josh Smith, but ultimately it goes to McKinstry. That gives Detroit 5 players in the all-star game. Texas still only has the one, Jacob deGrom. Not that the offense really deserves to have many All-Stars going, but Josh Smith certainly has been doing yeoman's work for the Rangers offensively all year long, and he continues to do so up until today. We'll get into some of the game scores tonight here in just a little bit, but just kind of want to run down some of the possibilities here for some trades. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, baseball trade values, I was kind of playing around on this site quite a bit, and one of the more interesting things that caught my eye was the rumors around the Minnesota Twins and what they could do for Joe Ryan. So let's look at the Twins, and the Red Sox were the team that was listed primarily in that news clip that we saw from John Paul Morosi. So we'll start with these two clubs. Joe Ryan at the top of the heap here, 70.1 value goes to the Red Sox. The framework Morosi said basically would involve sending Duran the other way. So let's go ahead and do that. Not saying anything about the 3.5 years left on the contract for Duran, but that's only gives them one more year than what Joe Ryan is giving them. But the value here as well, 40, that's a lot of value for what you're getting in Joe Ryan. So that's going to be your big piece that you're getting. The Red Sox are also expecting a premium on the return here. So let's see what it would take here. We need about another 30. There's nothing else that really fits that you're willing to give off of your Major League roster. You're not giving up Arias most likely. Narvaez, I don't think you're going to be giving him up either. So then you go down here. Peyton Tolley, maybe that could be your piece here. A couple of other good starting pitchers. I think you get into this range and you're probably going to go with some combination of, let's say, Connolly Early. Just kind of throwing names in here that kind of fit the price range. Let's do one more. Let's do another Luis Perales to the Twins, and let's go Valeria. Kind of giving them some depth in starting pitching since they're giving up an ace level starter. Now the Red Sox might want one more piece back in return from the Twins. If you go off of the majors pieces here, you're looking for around 2 or 3 value here. You could throw a Chris Paddock in this deal to kind of help them out with their pitching needs. Harrison Bader, as far as an outfield replacement, they don't really need because, again, their outfield glut they have. You could go with a failed prospect anyway in Austin Martin. Let's say they go with Chris Paddock. And that's your trade. Validate it, post it. Welcome in, Johnny. Appreciate you joining us early today. Yes, we want to do an earlier one today. We're going to try to do the 3 o'clock live, but I kind of went down a rabbit hole of trades anyway, and kind of got carried away with time. But we're going to be doing a little bit longer live tonight than usual. So appreciate you guys joining us. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up at the bottom of the video. But this was one of the rumors we saw out there today from John Paul Morosi. Joe Ryan to the Red Sox, Duran plus pieces to the Twins. This gives the Twins 3 starting pitchers with some level of expectation going into their futures. What would they be getting? Let me go back over here. This is going to be the Boston Red Sox farm system that we want to look up. Perales is now in the top 5. Let's see here. He hasn't pitched this year, though. Double-A, he threw 2 games, only 7 innings. Pretty good strikeout numbers. Injury, I'm guessing, is why he hasn't thrown this year. Red Sox are convinced that he can still become a frontline starter, though he'll miss the 2025 season. Okay. All right, so the other pitcher we threw in this deal, Valera and Early, what are their numbers looking like? Early, number 10 in this system. 6-2, 2.70 ERA, that's good. 10 starts, 13 games. Strikeout rate looks good. Walk rate's a little scary. Not a bad pitcher, though. And the last one was Valera. Tolley was the one that had jumped up so high in value. And why is that? Dang, because of those strikeout numbers. That's pretty dang good. Peyton Tolley, name to kind of keep an eye on. Valera was the 18-year-old that we were looking at as well. High A. Only thrown 8 games. He's 18 years old in high A, so he's a year or 2 ahead of where he's supposed to be. Those numbers should look a lot better next year, but look at the numbers. Let's see here. Walks are a little bit erratic. Maybe you'd want somebody different than Valera, even though he's 18. But either way, that would be your final piece there. Getting these great pieces here, along with Duran for 2.5 years of Joe Ryan. Yes, Isaac Paredes did get added to the All-Star as an injury replacement. I thought he was very deserving. I thought he was one of the snubs as well. a little bit less those than Joe Ryan. I think Joe Ryan absolutely should have been one of the pitchers selected, but because teams have to be represented, he wasn't selected. Shane Smith, for instance, from the White Sox, not saying anything against Shane Smith, but a 4+ ERA, 3-10 record, nothing really to write home about as far as strikeouts. Doesn't really ring an all-star to me. I would rather have seen Joe Ryan, Nathan Eovaldi, several other pitchers in there than him, but again, every team has to be represented. Now, I wanted to do a different type of a trade as well. Something that I've kind of been wondering if the Rangers were going to try to add at this deadline. We've talked a lot about what they'd be willing to give up or what pieces they have to work with. When you look at their, the talent base that they're working with, of course you could go for a lot of rentals. Those guys never really cost a lot as far as prospect capital. But if you're looking for anybody long term, you're going to have to give up some of your best pieces. So the only pieces I could see them trying to move at the top here, Robert Garcia. Nobody's really going to give up much for him considering he's an 8th-inning guy. He's still a good reliever, but at 20 value, you're not exactly going to be giving up a perennial all-star for that. Alejandro Rosario, a great pitching prospect, top 100 guy, injured as well. That also decreases his value. Josh Young, if you wanted to include him in a trade, his value is also depressed right now. Outside of that, you're not really going to trade any of these other pieces. Leiter, Smith, Castillo as well has incredible value for years in the future. Much like Sebastian Walcott was about a year and a half ago, it's kind of how I view Castillo right now. I'm not moving him for anything. But, there are other pieces that you could move. Dreiling, Drake, Osuna, DeVio. But all those guys are, 5, 6, 7 value. You're going to have to package a whole bunch of those together to get even a Byron Buxton level player. And that's just not worth it if you're the Texas Rangers. So you're probably going to be looking on the scrap heap or in the rental aisle, if you will. But if you're looking to go big game hunting, the one name nobody's talking about that I'm kind of surprised is Wyatt Langford. Now, before you guys come at me with the pitchforks, hear me out. Wyatt Langford, seen as a perennial all-star when he was drafted, seen as a bat-first player who really should be a linchpin in the middle of somebody's lineup. I'm not saying the Rangers are necessarily considering trading. I'm not even saying that they should. I'm just saying that for what they have to work with for trades, he's really the only piece on their roster, unless they're willing to move on from Walcott, that really has value that you'd be willing to move on from. Evan Carter, his value has dropped in half from about a season and a half ago. Wyatt Langford still has his value right at the top there, and with his numbers hitting around 230 right now, he is a better player than what he's shown so far this year. That's why you see his value still as high as it is. But if you're looking for a significant trade here at the deadline, that would be an interesting name for teams looking for controllable, superstar level players that could be coming back in a deal. Now, before the season, you guys are very familiar with how I viewed Wyatt Langford. I thought he'd be the second best player on this team, right behind Corey Seager, maybe even overtake Corey Seager for best player on the Texas Rangers. Safe to say that prediction has gone wrong. Not saying I'm not still rooting for Wyatt Langford. I'm just beginning to believe that there's another pathway forward for the Rangers if they truly believe 2025 is the year they could win. If you think that 2025 is where you can win, and you have a guy with such incredible value, especially for the future, but he's not producing in your lineup right now, and you have not much else to trade, and you have a big need offensively, why not take that one asset and try to break it apart into, say, 3 or 4 pieces? Rangers need a high leverage, elite level closer. Johan Duran from the Minnesota Twins makes sense. Until the hit by pitch today, I thought Byron Buxton would have been a great second piece in that deal to take over in center field for the Rangers and move Evan Carter over to left. And then you'd still have more assets coming to you from the Minnesota Twins. The reason why Minnesota would do this, cost control of Wyatt Langford, they save on Byron Buxton, and they'd have a superstar in the making, at least if you still believe that in Wyatt Langford, coming into town for pennies on the dollar. Another trade you could do if the Rangers wanted to go after a controllable starter, they could go after Joe Ryan. That would be another possibility. Less likely, but it's still out there. As far as trying to split it up into multiple pieces, though, that's not the only team that it makes sense for. The Atlanta Braves, they're going to be sellers this year. I know Alex Anthopoulos says, we're not selling, but let me just pull up the Atlanta Braves and just show you what their values really look like. The reason why they haven't been able to do much at all in free agency is because of their financial situation right now. You look at where their money is all tied up. Let me pull it up by salary here anyway. Matt Olson taking up about $100 million. You got Austin Riley taking up $163 over the next 7 years. Spencer Strider locked in at a very good contract, honestly, at $87. Michael Harris, a negative asset at this point because of how much they gave him so early. But they tried locking up all their guys early, which was good for a time. And for a period of time, those guys were producing. But when you start to have injuries, like you consistently have with Acuna, when you start to have issues with performance, like they did the last year and a half or so with their bats not really coming through, when you have guys like Marcell Ozuna, who's supposed to be a really good bat for you in the lineup, not coming through, then you have some losses. You don't have very much pitching depth anymore either. You basically sold out to get the players that you have on your roster, you paid them, and now you're locked into those deals. If the Atlanta Braves sold at the deadline and decided, hey, we want to get some financial flexibility in here, we want to bring in some youth, we want to shake things up here a little bit, they could easily do something like a Matt Olson trade and free up $20 million a season to try to bring in another starting pitcher, which to me is what they really need to go out there and do, and then still add a first baseman. Again, first basemen are cheap in this market. Not to say that you're going to get a Matt Olson for cheap, but I'm saying you could get a Jake Berger who gets you $230. You could go after a Josh Naylor in free agency in the offseason and give him $15 to $20 million. That would be still less than what you're giving to Matt Olson. You'd have him for a locked up under a deal, whatever you're comfortable with, and you don't even have to go long term because, again, first base just does not get paid anymore. We saw Vladimir Guerrero Jr. get paid with his extension with the Toronto Blue Jays. That's kind of more the exception than the rule. We saw what happened in the offseason with Pete Alonso, how prices for first baseman, again, are down once you get to free agency. So if the Braves wanted to save some money, that would be player number one I'd be looking to shed some money on. Not saying that I'm looking to get rid of him because of whatever he's doing on the field, but I'm saying just from a pure numbers perspective, it makes sense for the Atlanta Braves to move on from Matt Olson. Same thing goes for Austin Riley. He's locked up for 7 more years after this season. He's at a very good number as well. That contract is money. You look at his surplus value, 27. Honestly, I'd say it's probably closer to 30, and you could get a pretty nice haul if you decided to trade him. Remember, this year's trade deadline, there's not a lot of offensive talent out there. So if the Braves decide to sell, they try to move off of some of these contracts, they could still reap a pretty hefty reward for their efforts. You look at this trade deadline, the best pieces offensively to move, most likely, Rafi Devers is probably the most likely one to be on top right now. But you look at Alex Bregman, that might be the second best piece. He may not move anywhere because Boston still views itself as a contender, and especially if they get an extension done, he ain't going anywhere. Beyond that, Josh Naylor is not on the level of an Olson or a Riley. That's why these players would be incredibly valuable if the Braves decided to make them available, which I think they should at least start kicking the tires, especially on Matt Olson. Austin Riley, that contract is still incredibly valuable. One other piece I'd say for the Atlanta Braves to keep an eye on here at the deadline is Ronald Acuna Jr. Let's look at the surplus value here. He tops the Atlanta Braves right now at around, 83, 85 surplus value here according to baseball trade values. He's got 3 years left after this year. He's been incredibly inconsistent with his availability. He's injured 1 year, he's not the next. He is a dynamic player when he's on the field. Offensively, the bat really does play, speed, all those kinds of things. He's had his run-ins with this coaching staff and the coaching staff before that, as far as hustle, as far as commitment, all those kinds of things. You trade out that headache, the headache that's really producing quite a bit for you when he is healthy, but a headache that wasn't in the lineup when you won a World Series. You trade him away. You get all kinds of assets back. For instance, the Seattle Mariners need an offensive piece here at this deadline. They could use an outfielder. If the Braves decided to sell, the Mariners have all kinds of prospects to choose from that the Braves would benefit from. And the cost for the Mariners would still be within their budget. So you don't have to worry about taking back contracts if you're the Braves. You just try to get the best players you can. So you go over to the Mariners. The one player I would want in return would have to start with Lazaro Montes. He looks like a dynamic player right now. He's knocking the cover off the ball at Double-A. I would consider going after a Cole Young, who's debuting in the majors right now, over 100 at-bats now, but he has yet to really click. Colt Emerson tops the list as far as pieces that, for their system anyway, that have a lot of value. But for the Mariners, they have so many good young arms in their system coming. Maybe they're willing to part with a Logan Gilbert. Maybe they're willing to part with a Kirby. I think those would be great pieces for them to try to go after. If you got Ronald Acuna in this deal, if you're the Mariners, you're doing this trade to try to compete this year, so I might not be willing to trade both of one of those two guys. Woo's really stepped himself up as a player this year for that rotation. Maybe go just a step below those guys as a starter. Evans has been had a nice debut season anyway for the Mariners. I think that would be a nice piece. Where did he go? Bryce Miller was another one. There's Logan Evans. All right, so there's 3 decent pieces. You get 2 starters with Major League experience, and you're still 40 mil under here. So what could you go after? You could go after a Colt Emerson, like we mentioned off the top. You could go with Johnny Farmello. I think that would probably be a more likely option for them. Kind of replace what you're getting in the outfield. And then you could go after Felnin Celestin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but pretty sure I'm butchering it. You're a little bit over. If you're the Braves, you could get up another 5 mil piece just to kind of even it out. Make it a 5-for-2 deal like we see a lot of times when you're giving up 5 big prospects. For instance, Cole Hamels, that also brought back another reliever for the Texas Rangers back in the day. So if we're looking around that range, maybe a Elder goes the other direction. Allen, no. Davis Daniel, no. Stratton, maybe. Waldrop, I don't think so. You're not trading Sale. You could trade Osuna. They could use him at DH, so there you go. Osuna and Acuna to the Mariners in exchange for all of this. If you're the Braves, you could even throw a couple mil just to make it a little bit more even, but that's a pretty decent trade if I were making this deal. If I'm Atlanta, would I do this deal? For a guy that's routinely injured and unavailable, I get 5 cracks at the apple here to get another all-star player, and I get off of the contract of Marcell Ozuna, who's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, but I save myself a few more $1 million in the process. The finances for the Braves are publicly available, and you can see how they're a well-run baseball team, but you can see how even a few $1 million for a team like this would go a long way to both their free agents' efforts next offseason and to their team this year as well. But looking at the package you're getting back, you get 2 guys that probably go into your starting rotation right now. Remember, Chris Sale's injured. This doesn't even include the possibility of trading away Chris Sale at the deadline, which I think would be another possibility. But this gets you 2 starters in your rotation. Montez easily takes over in the outfield for Acuna, I believe, as soon as probably middle of next year, trade deadline season next year. Celestin gives them a shortstop prospect for the future, which they really don't have right now. Farmella, another shot at the apple anyway for another all-star outfielder. Really good value here if I'm the Mariners because I'm getting a player right now that I can put next to J-Rod and Cal Raleigh and really try to push the advantage there in a winnable American League this year. Anthony, Michael, would it make logical sense for the Marlins to trade both Sandy and Edward in the same trade to get maximum value if they trade Sandy at the deadline? No, because usually to get maximum value, you split them up. Now, if there's a blue chipper that you're targeting and you have to combine them to equal that value, that would make more sense. But I don't think there's a blue chipper that they're necessarily targeting in any type of a deal. The chips that they're looking for are guys that are under the age of 20. Most of the time, those guys are valued under 20 mil as far as value according to the site. So you don't really have to package those 2 guys to get that type of return. You're never going to add it up to equal a Sebastian Walcott or a Jesus Mate from the Milwaukee Brewers, who I would love to get my hands on if I'm any one of the teams out there. I just don't think it's going to happen. And, if you're trying to get a blue chip type of a piece, I think that's the wrong decision if you're the Marlins anyway. I'd rather go the quantity approach as far as trying to add talent on the offensive side of things. But make sure you guys hit that like on the bottom of the video. We'll have a little bit longer of a live today. Posted a video earlier today as well, so be sure to check that one out when you get a chance. And like the stream as well. Really do appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Let's get into some other interesting deals that I was kind of thinking about as we were preparing for our show. And I was just, again, the Wyatt Langford conversation that we just had a minute ago. If the Rangers were really looking to address all their needs here at the deadline, there's a couple of teams that they could go to. The Red Sox are one of them. The Twins would be another. Now, again, the reason why you're trading Wyatt Langford is to make yourself the prohibitive favorite for a World Series on the American League side. So you're going to have to get some really nice pieces in return. The Twins, I thought before the hand injury for Buxton, I thought he would have been a great pick, great piece to have in this deal. I thought Duran would have been another great piece. But then look at the value. You're still not all the way there. You still got about 12, 13 million that you'd still have to add and then some to make it worth it for the Rangers. And I just don't see a trade that really fits with what the pieces are in this range. Now, if you include, say, Pablo Lopez in this deal, the numbers kind of get all screwy anyway with the baseball trade values because they value him so low because of the injury. I thought he would have been a great add to this trade. Would it make it worth it for the Rangers, according to their site? No. Would it make it worth it to me? Possibly. Joe Ryan has incredible value as well. There's some framework that you could include a Joe Ryan in this deal, just to kind of show you what that framework would have to look like. That would get you pretty close. Carlos Correa would come in. Basically, they're getting off of the future contract years for Carlos Correa to bring in Joe Ryan. But again, the money still would not work for the Rangers. Money would have to go back to the Twins in order to make it worth the Rangers' time, because this would put them into the tax. If they were to do that, they could. The only way they could really get off of money here is Jock Peterson if they're trying to win it all in 25. That's their win now move, is to get rid of bad money here in the pursuit of taking on even longer term bad money in Carlos Correa. But then your value is all screwed up. Then the Twins are going to need something in addition to Langford to make it worth it. They're a team that's been connected to Josh Young in the past. So that's kind of where you would go. If it will load. There it goes. Only had to click on it 4 times. The Astros could trade for Sandy from the Marlins. I'm not saying they should. I'll put it that way. I don't think any team should at this point. But there would be another trade that they could do. And in fact, if the Rangers were worried about roster flexibility here, they got 4 players that are going to come back on the active roster. The Rangers could easily include one more player who they could move off of the 40-man roster. Duran, just to kind of equal out this trade. He could take over for Correa at shortstop or play second base. And there's your trade. I may have already posted this one earlier, but oh well, we'll post it again. This would be one trade that I would consider if I'm giving up the future of Wyatt Langford. I get Duran to solve in the 9th inning. Not just this year, but 2 years after. I get a starting pitcher, an ace-level starter on a very cheap deal. That's going to be the number 2, maybe the number 3 in my rotation after the deadline. DeGrom and Eovaldi, probably your 1-2. Joe Ryan becomes your 3. Molly coming back after the deadline, probably going to be your 4. And then Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter around your 4, 5, 6, depending on how injuries, the bullpen shakes out, those kinds of things as well. And you're still holding on to John Gray as kind of your ace in the hole if you have some injury issues in your rotation, or you can put him in that bullpen in a high leverage situation. He's had really good success in those types of roles. You get Carlos Correa, probably going to play third base for you after this deal. I think he'd be a better third baseman, healthier third baseman than what he's been able to show for the Minnesota Twins at short. But the bat really does play. They get 2 players that are having really nice seasons offensively. Buxton specifically, but again, I'm worried about the hit by pitch on his hand. We'll see if what the injury status is there. But you get the all-star in Joe Ryan, and Carlos Correa to me is the long-term, albatross that you're taking on 7 years after this one. In reality, I think it's like a 4 or 5 year deal, something along those lines, with vesting options that kind of add up towards the end. But the vesting options are all very, very cheap, and they get smaller as the years go by. So basically, you're going to be paying Carlos Correa here for about 4 more years after the season, I believe. And then those vesting options start to roll in. If you hit certain plate appearances, Silver Sluggers, if you win the ALCS, if you win the World Series, those kinds of things kind of lock in those vesting options. If they don't vest, then they become team options. And if Carlos Correa is still producing at those times, obviously you opt into those deals. If he isn't, you let him go, and you're basically stuck with him on the books for about 5 years here. So I kind of like how the Minnesota Twins structured the deal when they got him to sign it, but it's still so much money for a team that's going to be trying to find a new owner. So you're offloading the 15 plus million Buxton is making for the next 3 years. You're offloading the 30 million that Correa is going to be making for the next 3-4 years. You're offloading Duran's money, which he's making, I believe, 7 to 10 million each of the next 2 seasons. And then Ryan's going to be jumping up here with arbitration, probably into that $8 to $12 million range in his second year of arbitration, and then in the probably 18 to 25 range for his last year of arbitration, if I had to guess, on the high side for those numbers. If I'm the Twins, I'm very happy to get out of those numbers. Now, is it worth it to give up Ryan, Duran, and Buxton all in this deal along with Correa? Well, you're getting Wyatt Langford. If you just look at this deal for, say, Ryan for Langford straight up, I'd say it's a fairly close deal. Maybe a Duran kind of pushes it over to the top for the Marlins or for the Twins, because you get 4 years more of control with Langford than 2 with Ryan, so you're getting that experience there. Duran gets consistent playing time there in Minnesota, and we've seen when he gets consistent playing time, he usually does produce. This year, he's been really poor because he just cannot get on the field with Simeon, Seager, Young, when they're healthy anyway, and Josh Smith all being in those infield positions. There's really no playing time for him. So going to Minnesota would free up some time. I'm assuming they would trade Castro at the deadline as well if they made this move. As far as taking on Jock Peterson, you're offloading the contract of Carlos Correa. And just like I said, with the vesting options there, you're basically offloading Carlos Correa at around $30 million a season for the next 4 seasons instead of and taking on Jock Peterson's 18 to 21 million. I think it's 21 million next season if he picks up his player option, which he absolutely will. So you're already saving 12 million next season, and then you're getting all that 30 plus million in savings the next year and the year after for Carlos Correa. You're getting Josh Young, who's currently in the minor leagues, obviously having a disappointing season. His biggest issue is constantly giving himself too much pressure, and I think having him go to Minnesota would take a lot of that pressure off. What happens with Royce Lewis? Do they move him to short now that Correa would be gone? What do they do with Brooks Lee? Would become bigger questions there in Minnesota. But this would be a very interesting trade here at the deadline. But let's talk some other interesting trades that are more likely in my mind. So steering away from Wyatt Langford and Acuna and Olsen, those types of deals, what are some other interesting moves we could see here at the deadline? Well, the Yankees are said to be looking for some starting pitching. They're looking for third base. They're looking for bullpen. There's a lot of teams that are going to be offering starting pitching at the deadline this year. There's very few that are going to be offering any type of improvement offensively. So where can you get starting pitching on the cheap? That way you can save your assets for another hitter. Well, you could go to the Angels. I think they will probably be a team that would be willing to sell off a couple of pieces by the deadline. I don't think they view themselves as a contender. More likely is that they stand pat. Other teams that you could look for starting pitching. I think the Royals are probably the most likely of the teams here that could part with some starters here. He's already pitched in New York. The name I'm thinking of here is Seth Lugo. All right, where is he? I think he's around the 2 valuation points. Let's go with salary. That'll be easier to spot him. There he is. Making 21, and a total left for this year and next. I think he's making 15 next year. That's not a whole heck of a lot of money. They just DFA'd DJ LeMahieu. Posted that video earlier today, so if you guys are welcome to check that one out. But the Yankees looking for some trades, they could do something like Lugo here. Help him out in their rotation. The Yankees honestly wouldn't have to give up too much to bring him in. I would say if you could get them to include a couple million to make this deal happen, you could even get today's starter Cam Schlitter in this deal to help out the Royals going forward. I think that would be a good get for them. I think more likely, though, is going to be a lesser return here. Say like a Lelane or a Hampton. Somebody in this range. Selvage makes sense. Let's say they go with Hampton. Just for kicks and giggles. And then say the Royals toss in, I don't know, $3 million to help out the Yankees with their tax bill. So there you go. Validate the trade, minor overpay. It is because, again, you're giving up a piece that has no salary attached, while Seth Lugo's salary is really what's downgrading his value. There's a lot of people in the industry that don't think he can repeat the numbers next year, which, again, kind of puts him in that range of a Stroman. How effective is he going to be if he does start to lose his effectiveness? Curious to see if they decide to go around that or down that experiment if they go again. But another way they could improve their rotation, I think more likely, is for a rental here. If I'm the Yankees, the one team I'm looking at for rentals that also has a third baseman is the Arizona Diamondbacks. You guys know the name I'm thinking of. Eugenio Suarez. Obviously, with Jazz Chisholm moving over to second base, there's been a lot of rumblings about Suarez to New York. Let's see what it would cost to bring him in. Now, remember, we're also looking for starting pitching. At the major league level, with only a few months left in their contract. Zach Gallen has thrown well each of his last 2 starts. Threw recently in the World Series a year and a half ago anyway against the Texas Rangers and has the postseason experience. I think that would be a great get at the deadline here for the Yankees. Now, remember, the Diamondbacks are still looking to compete this year, so you're going to have to give up some talent going back the other way. What could you give up that would be worth it for the Diamondbacks? Well, I think you're going to have to look down here in this range on the Major League roster first. So Ben Rice makes some sense, but I think the value is a little bit skewed there. I wouldn't necessarily do that one. You get into the Devin Williams role, he's going to free agent at the end of the year. I don't see that as a possibility. Escara, I don't see that as a possibility either. They have Moreno. They don't need another catcher per se. Cruz, just looking for a player who could help them out. I think the guy that could take over at third base probably be Cabrera. He's making next to nothing. And then you can go for your prospects in this trade here. You could go for a Spencer Jones to take over there at first base. That'd be an interesting get. Honestly, I think that'd probably be a pretty nice get for them. I would prefer something different, though. I would probably go with the likes of... They're calling it, for Byron Buxton, a left-hand contusion. So we'll know more probably tomorrow on his injury. Let's say you go Lalane and Hampton. Give yourself 2 bites at the apple to replace Gallen. Validate it. Not too bad. Would I do that trade if I'm the Diamondbacks? Probably not. I would probably trade Suarez for, say, Hampton and a lower-level starting pitcher, and maybe Cabrera to kind of round out the deal, and I'd take out Lalane. And then for Gallen, I might do that one straight up for Lalane, but I'd get another prospect out of the deal if I split those 2 guys up. Same thing goes if they split these guys up to different teams. Say they trade Zach Gallen to the Chicago Cubs at the deadline because they absolutely need an ace. New York Mets could possibly offer up more as well. That's why you split up these types of assets at the deadline, because you can get higher values in return. Now, if there's a certain prospect you're targeting for a certain team, for instance, look at the Lakers and the Mavericks trade past few months ago. The Mavericks identified a player in Anthony Davis that they really wanted to go after. The way they would be able to get it is by trading away Luka Doncic, so they did. I'm not saying that was a smart move, but it's what they chose to do. They got lesser in return because they targeted a player specifically and got him in return. So, for instance, in this trade, if you're say you're targeting a higher piece in return. Say you're targeting Cam Schlitter in this deal. To get Cam Schlitter, you're not just going to be able to trade Zach Gallen in this deal. You have to include Suarez in this deal. And then is it worth it giving up both Gallen and Suarez to get Cam Schlitter? I don't think so. Baseball purist, welcome in. Hey, Michael, what about a trade for Adrian Hauser for the Bronx Bombers? He was available to everyone earlier this season. He didn't make the roster for the Rangers, was signed early in the season with the White Sox, and he's been great for them. Threw another great game today. But let's go ahead and answer your question here. What would it take if you went with Hauser to the Yankees? I'm not sure he really fits the ability to handle a postseason series, but if you're trying to get through the 162, I think he'd be a great 4th, 5th starter for you. But looking at the White Sox, we're looking for Hauser. His value is 5.4. That's a little bit surprising that it's that high. Yankees, it's because he's making next to nothing is why he's so valuable. For the Yankees, I think you'd probably have to give up 2 pieces here. Probably both starters. Lalane could be your first piece, or salvage. Let's go salvage. And then let's go a little bit cheaper on the last piece in this deal. Lang has been could be a piece there. Peralta, a 16-year-old shortstop. Those are hard to come by with value. So let's say they go that direction. Benitez. What would that look like? We're probably way over value. 2.5 over. I think you're a little too high here on value. So, say they do what the Yankees have liked to do in the past. They go with the, hey, take 4 of our prospects and we'll give you, those guys rather than our top end pieces. So say they go with Alejandro That gets you there, but I think they'd go one more. Think back to the Joey Gallo trade is kind of what I'm channeling on this deal. White Sox get 4 cracks at the apple here. Good value, low cost pieces for a prospect or for a piece they really didn't have any value in before the season. Suddenly turns into 4 lottery tickets for the White Sox. Say you take out Cerna, it's too much value, go even lower in the farm system. You get Herrera. Probably in the top 60 prospects for the Yankees. I think that's a deal the Yankees probably say yes to because it doesn't cost them anything anytime soon. They can easily replace these pieces because they're the Yankees. They get those international prospects to sign for the league minimum contract or signing bonus anyway, and away they go. Heel, I hate to say this. No, I actually don't, but to be honest, the Yankees this trade deadline are either going to make a dumb trade or Suarez will magically lose his aura and half his talent. Well, Suarez is playing well above his head right now. So, 28 home runs or whatever he's at right now, that's way better than what anybody was expecting him to do at any point when he was traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks a couple of years ago from the Seattle Mariners. Even Seattle said, was basically like, this guy can't provide power anymore. Let's just try to offload his deal and try to get our financial situation kind of under control. They did, and they're happy to do so. And now this year's kind of an aberration for him, but could be an interesting return for the Diamondbacks depending on what they decide to go after in a trade. Let's check in on some of the scoreds from around Major League Baseball. A few of the games are now underway. Looks like the Rangers just scored. How did that happen? I'm curious. Double by Smith, fly out, and then a ground out allowed the run to score 1-0. Then Adolis got a single. Looks like Adolis just stole second, another runner in scoring position. For Jonah Heim, who's swinging it a little bit better this as of late, but still not necessarily a productive baseball player yet for me. But he and Higashioka are both playing a little bit better offensively, so curious to see if they can continue their better offensive performance in this one. Interesting game there. Let's go back and check out the rest of the scoreboards. Let's see, Yankees and Mariners, 9-6 there. That game became a high-scoring affair rather quickly there. I was watching the game earlier. It was 4-2 in like the 6th, I believe. 5th, 6th inning. So I guess they decided to go against or score against those bullpens quite a bit. Twins 4-2 against the Cubs anyway. Twins, a great interview during the game anyway with the All-Star Joe Ryan. Really great conversation with him I saw. That basically when the Rangers went up there to play the Twins in Minnesota, he picked Jacob deGrom's brain quite a bit and actually learned a few things that helped him throw a little bit better since his conversations with him. Said another big influence in the majors on him was Zach Wheeler when he got to play in the WBC, I believe, and learned a lot from Zach Wheeler in his time on that club. Royals and Pirates 3-3 there. Let's save our season game there. Nationals 8-2 over the Cardinals. Cardinals really, for me, the Cardinals need to put together a few wins here if they're going to try to convince anybody that they're not going to sell their expiring deals at the deadline. For me, they need to sell those deals, but the only way I think they change that conversation is if they go on a little bit of a win streak here. Looks like another game just popped up above it. Oh no, they just flopped them around. Okay. Houston losing 2-0 at home to the Guardians. No score so far in Arizona and San Diego. Late game, Braves and A's still not underway. White Sox did finally end the Blue Jays win streak. They lose 2-1. Hauser getting the win, hence the reason for interest in Hauser from Yankees fans, I'm sure. Brewers 3-2 winners in 10. Dodgers coughed it up in the 9th inning and then couldn't score in the top of the 10th, and the Brewers just basically took it home thereafter. Verlander not pitching well today for the Giants. The Phillies end up running away with it 13-0. Rays 7-3 winners over the Tigers. Rays struggling as of late to win games, but finally do so and pulled a 50 wins on the season. Red Sox again clobber the Rockies as expected. Again, this was expected for them. They were expected to beat the Rockies. They were expected to go into the All-Star break on a bit of a winning note, and maybe even a postseason spot. But after the All-Star break is when their season is really going to be decided. how they perform against a tough three series in a row there against playoff teams, and we'll see how the Red Sox ultimately stack up. Reds clobber the Marlins. Alcantara giving up 6 runs in 4+ innings. Yikes. His ERA goes from 7.01 to 7.22. It does not actually decrease in that one. And then the Mets and Orioles postponed this evening. We'll get into our power rankings here at the end of our live. We'll probably do that around the 10 o'clock hour. But kind of wanted to kind of go around the entire league and show what's going on tonight. Let's see there. Time does not come through there. All right, let's get back into some trade talk, shall we? If you guys are new here, please feel free to hit that subscribe button, like the video, tell us which team you'd like to see make a trade next. We'll try to go through a bunch of different trade ideas and see what makes sense for these ball clubs. I know we have a fair amount of Cardinals fans with us as well, so let's go ahead and do one for the Cardinals real quick. They're said to be looking for some starting pitching here at the deadline if they're going to buy, which, like I said, they're going to have to win some games here before the deadline to convince any of us that they're actually going to buy, because I still think this is a year where they need to figure out what they got long term. But if they do, what would they go after? Well, we did a trade the other night that included Seth Lugo going to the Cardinals in exchange for Jordan Walker and so forth. Kind of a shake things up, kind of a change of scenery guy in Jordan Walker. But the Cardinals, like I said, are still looking for starting pitching. So where could you go to get it? There's tons of it out there that's going to be available, but where could you go? Let's see here. Tigers obviously not going to trade away their starters. Rockies don't have a starter to trade. Rays have a couple of them. I don't buy how so many people are saying, oh, the Rays will never sell. They're in playoff positioning. Why would they sell here? It's what they do. Even when they're in the postseason race, when they're in a wild card spot, or even when they're winning the division, they trade away valuable pieces of their team. We've seen it in years past. Garza, we've seen it Snell, we've seen it with David Price. They don't really care where they are in the standings because they see an opportunity on the market and they take advantage of it. Now they try to wait until it's the most advantageous time. Don't get me wrong. And when you're in the middle of middle of a race for a wild card spot, isn't necessarily the best time. But if you can get a great value on a guy you've been trying to trade for over a year and a half in Zach Little, then you try to do it. Drew Rasmussen has his value through the roof right now. He will never be a higher value to trade than right now. So if you're going to try to trade him, now's when you do it. So I don't buy all the arguments I see out there about the Rays not being sellers at this deadline, or even buyers/sellers, or somebody who could do a little bit of buying and selling. I think if you trade Little in a trade, you're going to bring back a little bit of major league talent, but you're also going to bring back pieces of your future that are going to make big impacts next year, the year after. And I think the Rays can walk and chew gum. I'll put it that way. Rangers, they have some starting pitching coming back with John Gray. Maybe you go that direction. It's kind of another contract you could take on and see what you could do as far as with the John Gray in your rotation. I think they're looking for somebody with a little bit better track record this season. Padres make a little bit of sense, but their starting pitching, they're very thin there in starters right now. I'm not sure how willing they are to move one of them, even though it'd be wise for them to do so to capitalize on the value of a King, etc. But ultimately, that's not going to happen. Orioles have a ton of starting pitching, but none of it really producing. Nationals don't really have anybody that moves the needle. Marlins, you could go for Cabrera. We've seen that type of a trade before. Alcantara back to the Cardinals makes some sense. Mariners have a ton of pitching they could move, and it would be controllable. That'd be another good thing as well. So we'll keep those two teams in mind, Marlins and Mariners. Guardians, nobody really that moves the needle. Giants, they're looking for starters, not looking to trade them away. Diamondbacks, that's been one that I've seen a few as trade possibilities out there. Majors, contracts. Now, we just did Zach Gallen. Merrill Kelly is also a free agent at the end of the year. So, 36 years old. I don't think he's going to cost a whole lot in free agency to retain him. So, say you go after Merrill Kelly. What does his numbers look like so far this year? .341 ERA, that's good. 111 innings, 19 starts. WHIP is good. And he's been very good recently, pitching to a sub-3 ERA. Okay. So this could be a trade that would give them a starter for game 1, game 2 of a postseason series. What would it take if you're the Cardinals? What are you willing to give up? It's only going to cost you around 4 or 5 in value here. You could go with Roby. I think they'd prefer to hold on to him, though. Helsley obviously has a lot of value right now, but if they're trying to buy here at the deadline, they're not looking to move him. So you could go with Romero, Graceffo. Graceffo makes some sense as the first piece going back the other direction. Say you do Graceffo to kind of keep another starter going back the other direction, which is what I think the Diamondbacks would be looking for. And then you go for a prospect. Say you go for a 17-year-old starter. That's pretty close value, and I think it'd be about the right trade here. Graceffo and a 17-year-old starting pitcher prospect in exchange for Kelly. What's Graceffo doing? I may be mispronouncing that. My apologies if I am. He's not actually on the Major League roster anymore. I remember he was, though. Anyway. Anthony, Michael, in your opinion, do you think it would be realistic for the Marlins to trade both? No. No, I do not. They would get more in separate trades. Yes, they would. All right. Let's do another one. Chicago Cubs are looking for an ace. We just did another trade with the Cardinals for an ace-ish. Where could they go if you're the Cubs? Well, they're all in this year. So think of trades that kind of fit that all-in direction. Maybe a little bit of a lottery ticket, which is why you'd make the trade for a Sandy Alcantara. His value is so depressed right now. And after his performance he put out there today, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this value drops even lower to like a 13 or something like that. But you're going to still have to bowl over the Marlins to move him. So with that being said, it ain't going to cost you a pretty penny anymore. Rojas probably one or straight up, I think would be pretty even. Maybe they bought or fudge a little bit here if they want to go after Triantos. That could make some sense. Triantos, they could go Melendez. I still think Rojas is the most likely, and then they go Melendez there. So there's a trade to get Sandy Alcantara. Honestly, I think this is still a bit of an overpay. But there's a way to get Sandy Alcantara to the Cubs, and hopefully for the Cubs he finds his way because he has not been pretty this year. Heel, should the Yankees consider trading Rice or Wells in a trade for a big star player? Well, I think they would consider it this year, but I don't think there's a big star player available. So, for instance, say the Cubs or the Braves decide to sell, and you could do some out-of-the-box trades there. I think that would be where you would try to do it. Because Atlanta, I think, has some really nice contracts they could go after. We talked about the Yankees needing a long-term answer at first base after the season anyway. So if they did do a trade, say you traded Olsen, whose swing would look fantastic in New York. So say you trade Olsen to the Yankees. Yankees basically bite down on the entire contract. What would it cost? You're looking around 16, so I think Ben Rice is a little bit above, but maybe that could be the ballast in the trade. Other pieces, it's tough to see some that middling value here. So you could do like a Spencer Jones to the Braves as kind of your frontliner. You could do Hess and maybe Perez. That's probably a little too much, but no, actually it's pretty close. 3.2 over. Spencer Jones for Matt Olson, I'd do that. By the way, he's hitting over, I believe, a 900 OPS right now over the last 3 weeks. He's been really good. But that's a Spencer Jones trade. Now, if you're looking at the Braves for a more valuable piece, say like an Austin Riley and that deal, that'd be a great contract for the Yankees. A different player, though, than Olson, but I think he'd be incredibly valuable either way. It kind of evens out your lineup a little bit as well with the lefties that you bring in all the time. This would be a 27 value, so this kind of fits what you need as far as the Yankees going back to kind of answer your question there, Rice or Wells. Wells, I don't think you move in this deal, but Rice, that would be the piece I would move. So you trade him to the Braves. Then I'd probably include Jones or Schlitter in this deal. Gets you to 27, and then you go maybe Perez again just to kind of round out the deal. I don't mind that deal. Anthony, do they need a long-term answer in center field to move Judge or right? Maybe Ronald Acuna? Well, they already have Judge there. They have in the outfield Jason Dominguez as well. They're rumored to be interested in Kyle Tucker this offseason. If they go after Ronald Acuna now, that probably rules them out for Kyle Tucker. But it would increase, or it would give them a dynamic they don't really have, and that's speed. So let's do an Acuna to the Yankees trade. I mean, they would certainly have to overpay, don't get me wrong. But you get Ronald Acuna. Got to wonder about his availability, of course. But what would it cost? Austin Wells? I don't think they would want Austin Wells back in return. Lombard, as far as a shortstop for the future, I think would be a great option. There would be conversation about Dominguez coming back the other way as well. In fact, I'm not sure you'd be able to do it without including him in this deal. Luis Gil as a starting pitcher. He's got 3 years left, but arm injuries, got to wonder there. They did just take Fried away from the Braves. I think they would probably go Spencer Jones, and then that would allow them the flexibility to move on from Matt Olson as well. That would be interesting. But if we just did those two pieces, we're still 40 away. Will Warren? No. Well, maybe. That gets you close. And then say, just to kind of finish it off, you throw in Cunningham. And the Yankees. Who's on the Majors roster that doesn't have a whole lot of value here? Lopez, Bummer, Iglesias, Kelenic, Anderson, Sandy Leon. Nobody really moving the dial there. Page 2. Chris Sale, Elder, Schauber. None of those pieces really fit. Maybe an Elder. Gives them some more pitching to go back at the deadline. That'd be close. So your trade, to just kind of answer your question there, Anthony. Ronald Acuna goes to the Yankees along with a former starter, long reliever at this point now, in exchange for a starting pitcher. Immediately goes into your rotation. Atlanta would like that. You get a first baseman of the future, outfielder of the future in Spencer Jones. You get a shortstop for next year probably, maybe the year after. And you get Bryce Cunningham, a starter to hope on. All for Ronald Acuna. Honestly, I would like the other trades that I've done for Ronald Acuna more, but this isn't bad. This would be a trade that I'd at least consider. I wouldn't hang up the phone if I'm Atlanta if you propose this with your first offer. I'd listen to you. Michael, the Cubs don't really make any logical sense for the Marlins because they're looking for teenagers and prospects in their 20s that are far away from the major leagues. The Cubs don't have them. Absolutely. That's why I think the Cubs are going to have, or the Marlins are going to have a very limited market for Sandy Alcantara this year. That's why I think at the trade deadline it's unlikely that I would move him. I think they're going to try to rehab his value and trade him in the offseason because right now a 7.22 ERA ain't cutting it. And who's going to be willing to trade for it? And what are they going to be willing to give up for a pitcher who currently is throwing to a 7.22 earned run average? I know ERA and everything, but it certainly does look like Alcantara is a long way away from being the ace that he once was. And until he shows that, I think the Marlins should hang on to him. I think the time to trade him was when his value was highest this offseason, before you really saw the negative effects of the season, when he couldn't get any outs, when his arm slot kind of goes ebbs and flows, when he is lazy with his command, those kinds of things. Heel, do you think Miami players like Otto Lopez, Mayers, or even Jesus Sanchez could find new homes? I think anything could be moved in Miami. They set the goal this offseason, before the season even began, that they were going to try to trade everything at the deadline for a lot of young, super young talent and just kind of have like a AAA roster at the majors next season. That was their goal. That was their goal last season as well, but they weren't able to capitalize on it. Alcantara got hurt. Perez was hurt. Cabrera wasn't performing as well. Same thing with Luzardo. And so they weren't really able to take advantage of a pitching-starved market. And so this year, there's so many arms that are available from some of the teams that are out there. None of the Marlins pitchers are high quality anymore. They certainly have some good depth options. They have 3-4 type starters, and they have Sandy Alcantara as kind of a wild card right now. But nobody's going to blow the market away like Alcantara would have was he in ace form. But the Marlins are certainly going to be looking to trade quite a few players. Liam Hicks, as far as a catcher, I think is a name to watch. I think Stowers is a name to watch offensively. I think they would be willing to move him as long as they get the right bats in return. Anthony, Michael, we're looking at the service numbers for Sandy. When you actually look at how he's pitching, he's actually pitching to a 2.35 ERA, but that ERA is overloaded because the bullpen is blowing the leads. No. Look at his velocity is about in the same area. His pitch usage is all about the same. But when you actually look at his arm angle, when you look at his the laziness with his pitches that he throws, he was trying to get. For instance, he was throwing against Cincinnati earlier today, and while I was tuning in, and you just see a lazy slider trying to get me over slider for the first pitch, get clubbed into left center field over the fence by Noelvi Marte. It's that type of lackadaisical throwing, the lack of focus when he's on the mound that's really causing him harm this year. And sure, the bullpen does cough up some runs on him, absolutely, just like they do anybody else. But they're not coughing it up to a tune of 5 more runs per 9 innings. That would mean you're leaving the bases more than the bases loaded every single time you go out there. So that's not what's happening. Can you see what a trade would look like with the Houston Astros? We can. Michael, do you think I'm being a fanboy of them protecting Sandy and saying he isn't performing that well when it comes to ERA because of the bullpen? I don't think you're doing what Michael Kay accused the Toronto Blue Jays broadcasters of, being fanboys. I don't think that at all. I think that you are looking through it with rose-colored glasses, but when you look at Sandy Alcantara, you can't say the pitcher now and the pitcher we saw, say, 3 years ago is the same guy. They just aren't. The effectiveness, the sharpness on their pitches, the pitch location, the attention to detail is so much different. And, of course, you look at the numbers with the shift anyway when he won the Cy Young versus now, there is no pitcher who's been more effective than him. So those are two of the biggest things I'm looking at. It's just the focus issues he has, the ERA that's resulted as a result of it. And then, of course, the shift being the beneficiary of it, kind of those hits, just falling in here or there. But today, what we saw versus Cincinnati was not because the shift wasn't employed. That was just lack of focus on the mound. That was hard hit balls up the middle. That was hard hit balls over the left center field wall. It wasn't necessarily the shift that would have saved him a run here or there. That was all induced by Alcantara's arm and not the bullpen coming in and coughing up some runs. That's all on Sandy. And I think he's going to have to rework a little bit of how he focuses on the mound. He's going to have to focus a ton more on his attention to detail with his arm slot, with the location of his pitches, those kinds of things. As far as velocity, I think that's all back. I think it's all mental right now between the ears for Sandy Alcantara right now, and making sure his mechanics are repeatable. And that's been the issue that a lot of Miami Marlins people have been noticing so far this year. His mechanics have not been very repeatable from start to start. All right, you asked for Houston for Sandy Alcantara. Let's go ahead and do that one. We got a few Astros fans, so that might be a starter that they could afford to go after. And if it doesn't work out for Sandy, they can obviously have other starters in there. They certainly have had a wealth of talent on the pitching side really come up and prove themselves this year. But if we're the Marlins, we want, again, young players coming back. So let's see what it would take. Sandy comes in. We're looking to be blown away by an offer. Otherwise, we'd probably hold on to him through the season. But what would it take? Again, 20 and under is what we're looking for on the position player side. First player I notice, Walker Yannick, 21 years old, 9.1 value. 17-year-old Alvarez, we'll start there. Nobody else really clicks here, so we're going to have to include somebody else. Cam Smith, you're not including him. He's too valuable at the major league level. Bryce Matthews, too old. I think Yannick is probably your most likely at that point. That gets you close as far as value. You could do Hernandez. And I think you'd probably have to include one more, Diaz. I'm not saying this is a trade that the Marlins would accept, but it's the trade that the Astros could offer to bring in Sandy Alcantara. And again, are they willing to take back a 21-year-old catcher? Catchers take a little bit longer to develop, so they might do it for a catcher that they really like. I will say that. So maybe they'll fudge it by a year with the catcher. All right, do you think Marlins can get a good haul for Eduardo Cabrera, being that he's one and performing a little bit better? I think they could probably get a little bit better return for him, yes. Another reason I want to see Sandy to the Astros is because the Astros, for some reason, are really good at helping a pitcher find himself again. Verlander, Kikuchi, Morton, Cole. You're forgetting Cole back in the day. He learned a lot from Verlander as well. So, they have had a track record of that. The Dodgers have had a track record of that. I'd hate to see him to go to L.A. and then re-find, that fountain of youth for him. Re-find what he needed to before. And, I think that's part of the reason why you see a team like the Dodgers in on him. You don't necessarily want him to go there because if he does, then that's just another ace the Dodgers have to work with. So I still think the Dodgers are the most likely. They have the most talent in what the Marlins are looking for in return. I still think that's the most likely destination for him. Let's check in on some of the scores from around Major League Baseball. Looks like the Rangers scored again. How about that? They committed an error, though. I hate seeing that. Rangers are really good defensively, but lately they've been coughing up a few errors here or there. Not too good for a team that's been consistently in the top three defensively all year long. Nationals 8-2 still. Royals take the 4-3 lead. Astros finally get on the board, but they are down even further now, 4-1. Jacob Junis is now out of the bullpen there. Paredes, the All-Star, is up. Diamondbacks take a 1-0 lead over the Padres. Braves have put a 4 spot on the Athletics, and still nobody out. I want to click on this one real quick just to see how they got there. Remember, I told you guys, as the heat rises in the summer, playing in this AAA ballpark is going to see massive, and I mean massive, offensive numbers. I feel sorry for any pitcher who has to play out there. So, my apologies to any pitcher who has to go play in this ballpark. All right, let's see here. Ronald Acuna led off, home run, 1-0. Single by Olsen, double by Riley. Home run, 3-run home run by Drake Baldwin, 4-0. And then finally, Jerkson Profar struck out. Marcell Ozuna is up now. 4-0 is the score there. Atlanta and the A's. Let's see how the Rangers got that second run across the board. Higashioka came through again. I told you those catchers were coming around for Texas. That's his third home run of the season. The Rangers have been... a lot of Rangers folks have been talking about the lack of power from Higashioka, a guy who hit, 15, 7, I can't remember how many home runs he hit last year. I want to say 17 home runs last year in only 81 games. And So far this season, Higashioka had only hit 1 home run until this road trip. Now he's got 2 on this trip, one against his former team in the Padres, and now another one here on the West Coast versus the Angels. Could be interesting if he gets it going here. Smith took a walk. A single by Corey Seager, first and third now. Rangers offense could be waking up. I'd like to see that. All right, let's update the page here, see if anything else is happening. Not too much there. Anthony, how about Cabrera to the Dodgers? I don't think that the Dodgers would go after Cabrera. That's the only thing, Anthony. I think Cabrera would probably go to these teams looking for a 2-3 type starter. I think the Dodgers are only big game hunting this year. I think they have zero interest in going after middling starters. They might go after a depth option on free agency or somebody who's DFA'd, but I don't think they're going anywhere near a starting pitcher who's not an ace on somebody's team or at least a number 2. So, for instance, guys like Joe Ryan. Guys like Chris Sale, guys like Sandy Alcantara are going to be the types of pitchers that they're going to target. I think if they do go after one of those guys, Sandy Alcantara makes the most sense. He's the lowest acquisition cost, and he could be the biggest benefit to them if they get him to pitch like he used to with the Marlins a few years ago when he won the Cy Young. 3-0 Texas. All right. Would they get a sacrifice fly? Yep, sacrifice fly. 3-0 Texas. Not too bad. Adolis Garcia on a sinker. I'm guessing this is a double play. Nope, line out to Soler. Interesting. He didn't pound it into the dirt. And Jonah Heim up again. Let's check in on those Astros real quick. Looks like they've put up 2 runs now on the board. And Cam Smith strikes out just as we go to the game here. They go to the 9th. Guardians winning 4-2. Summary scoring. Home run by Martinez in the first. A home run by Ramirez in the first. Rodriguez singled home a couple of runs, and then a double by Dubon and a double by Altuve scored the 2 Astros runs in the 8th. Let's see how that at bat is going for Jonah here. 2-1 on him. We'll be kind of checking in on some of these games as the evening goes along, doing some trade talk as we go. So be sure to join us as we're going to be live every single night leading up to the trade deadline. We'll delve into pretty much all the headlines that you see all day long. Later tonight we'll get into our MLB power rankings. Fouled back by Heim. Summer League about to get underway for the NBA. A lot of the Dallas Mavericks media is out there, so we'll be getting some interesting updates over the next week about Summer League. We'll do some of the discussion during our live. Edgecombe is having a great Summer League so far. You won't get much NHL news now with the free agency over. There's really not much unsettled anyway on the hockey side of things. Coaching is pretty much settled down as well. The only thing that you really see is RFA status being changed here or there, some out of the blue trades because extensions weren't given to players. Outside of that, you're not going to really see any big news from the NHL for the next few weeks. Pop up to third. Yep. And out. Jonah is retired. So the Rangers 3-0 currently over the Angels. 2 teams vying for wild card contention. They finally got out of the top half of the first. 4-0 Braves there. let's check in on the standings real quick just to kind of show you where everybody's at entering play today, or at least through play at the moment. Tigers still best in the American League, 59 wins, 35 losses, 73 in their last 10. However, they did lose to the Rays today. Astros winning the AL West right now by a convincing margin, 55 and 37 so far, and the Blue Jays are out in front in the AL East, 54 and 39. Three wildcard teams, Yankees, Rays, and Mariners, all having varying levels of success recently. Yankees, for instance, were on a terrible losing streak for a period of time there. Now have won 3 straight games. They're 51 and 41. Rays seem to have steadied themselves after losing, I believe, 8 of their last 11. They get a win today anyway, 50 and 43. And the Mariners, 48 and 44. They lose again to the Yankees today. Curious to see how the rest of that series goes and how the Mariners end up going into the All-Star break. Is the urgency there to try to compete and push the chips to the middle, add a bat here at the deadline? I think it is. Cal Raleigh's talked about it in years past, and I think they will add one this season. Wildcard teams, teams that are still trying to get into that race there. The Boston Red Sox, 49 and 45, I think with a 6-game win streak. We all knew that they were going to have a nice run of games here leading up to the All-Star break. The real test comes after the season, or after the All-Star break anyway. Minnesota Twins, nice little win streak now that they've got 45 and 47. 3 games back of the wild card. I still am not convinced that they'll buy here at the deadline. This is an incredibly streaky team. If they go in to the All-Star break winning, say, 5 of 7, maybe they come out of the All-Star break losing 10 of 12. It's just the way the Minnesota Twins have been going this year. Texas, every time they get close to 500, they seem to have a couple game losses, and then they have another couple games where they win. They're playing a little bit better than 500 baseball for the past month. I believe they're 16, 17, in 18, something like that. Right around 500 anyway for the last month. They just need to get another bat in there, I believe. And the biggest piece for me is a high leverage reliever who can come in and lock things down in the 9th for those games that they do have won. So I think if they just lock down those games and avoid going into extras because you cough up a run in the 9th because you can't score enough runs in the 1 through 9 innings and you go tied to the 10th inning. If you just solve those issues, Rangers are easily in the playoff picture right now. Would easily have a wild card spot right now. They have had the best pitching all year long, and I still think they do, even without having an elite closer at the back end of their bullpen. I believe they rank number 1 in ERA, number 2 in WHIP, number 3 in batting average against. As a pitching staff, they've been very, very good. Heel, I love the Angels. They are always here to help the Rangers and Astros get back on track. They're like the best friend supporting you while you are on rehab. Love that one, Heel. I absolutely love that one. To me, the Angels are kind of the get-well team for the Rangers. They just, for some reason, the Angels just really struggle against Texas for the past, 3-4 years anyway. And kind of coincides with Shohei going out of town and injuries, etc., kind of cropping up with the Angels while he was there towards the end. But the Angels really have had their issues with the Rangers as of late. For the same thing for the Astros. We'll see what the Rangers do after this series, what they do against Houston. I think that'll be a very telling series for Texas, and then how they come out of the break as well. Do they go on a 3 or 4 game win streak out of the All-Star break? I think that would be a great sign for the Rangers going forward in the second half. Do they make a big trade over the All-Star break? Do they add an All-Star reliever? Those are things I'd be looking for if you're a Rangers fan. All right, let's check in on those scores once again real quick before we do the NL side. Not really updating very fast on here. Single by Darno. It's Kumar Rocker on the mound today for Texas. 5.8 ERA. Certainly is starting to come down. He's starting to show a lot more consistency. If you can get 5-6 innings out of him today, I think that'd be a very good thing for Texas going forward. But the number 8 hitter gets the first hit of the game for the Angels. Rengifo up next. A couple of good veterans down in the lineup. A lot of veterans in this Angels lineup, honestly. So I think this team, while it's got some good vets, they would be best to try to trade away some of these guys and recoup some value and just to kind of continue to allow that farm system to grow. It's not too far removed, anyway, from a team that had the 2 of the 3 best players in the world at the time. Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, when he was still healthy at the time, anyway, and Aaron Judge. Of course, being in New York, so they had 2 of the 3 best players in the entire game, and unfortunately, they weren't able to sniff the playoffs. And I think the roster that they ultimately tried to put together in the final season of Shohei while he was there with LA really depleted any future they had with the LA Angels. We called it organizational malpractice at the time to not trade Shohei, to not recoup some value, and instead you try to double down, triple down that he's going to come back, and it didn't work out. Double there by Rengifo gets things going here for the Angels. Second and third, nobody out. Let's see if they can get a runner home if you're an Angels fan. But that would be my direction if I'm the Angels. I'd try to find a taker for Soler's contract. I'd try to find a taker for d'Arnaud. Catchers are hard to come by as far as anyone of value. And if his offense comes around a little bit before the trade deadline, I think he'd be a nice get for somebody here. Rengifo, I think, was a better trade asset last trade deadline, but right now his value is a little bit depleted. I think he could still get you a nice return as well. Joe Adell, I think, would be the one piece I'd try to hold on to. He's finally starting to show some of that the promise that we saw from him that made him a top 10 prospect in the game. Ward, I think, absolutely should be moved because, again, the dearth of offensive talent. I think he'd probably be one of the top 5 hitters that's moved at the deadline. If Boston does not move in Alex Bregman, if the Atlanta Braves don't move a Olsen or a Riley or an Acuna, I think Ward would easily be in that top 5 hitters moved at the deadline. Trout, untradeable contract. Shanuel, still a future here. And Neto, the same as well. Moncada, I don't think has enough value, but if somebody is willing to take him as kind of a depth piece for them, hey, here you go. Hail Schlidler. Welcome in, Joe. Welcome in. He did have a good game today against the Seattle Mariners. Rocker trying to get the strikeout here to settle things down here in the bottom of the third. And gets it on a cutter outside the zone. Bad chase there by Neto. Shanuel coming up, hitting .266 on the year. There was conversation this offseason that they would move him to left field and bring in Pete Alonso, go out there and try to really push this thing forward and try to compete for a postseason spot this year. I think they chose wisely and chose not to do that. I think going for a signing more along the lines of Moncada fits a lot more of the timeline here of the Angels. They can easily trade Moncada at the deadline here. They don't disrupt the development of Shanuel over there at first. They let Adell get some playing time out there instead of trying to fight for at-bats as a fourth outfielder. Let's go ahead and check in on the rest of the standings on the AL side. The teams that are below Texas here, talking about the Royals, the Angels, the Guardians, those 3 teams. I think those 3 teams are going to have to make a decision here in the next week and a half. If they kind of are around the same spot they are now, I don't think these teams are going to be buying at the deadline. The Royals may not end up selling, but I don't think they're certainly not going to buy if they don't climb here in the next in the next week or two. The Angels, I don't think should be buying. I think they could stand pat with the roster that they have and just see how lucky they can get. But I think the more accurate decision for them for the long-term future would be for them to move on from some of the expiring deals that they have, the older veterans that they have, and just see what prospects they can get and turn them into gold down the line. Guardians, things have not gone well for them, but they're 2-8 in their last 10, winners of 2 straight. Maybe they finally stop their skid, but I just don't see it for them this year. They don't have enough offense to me. And I think trading away from their strength is the most likely course they take here at the deadline, even if they do somehow manage to climb here in the standings. I don't think they'll necessarily be buyers, but I think they could do a little bit of retooling, if you will, as far as their assets that they have on their roster. Say trade a Emmanuel Clase for a more productive hitter to go in the middle of that lineup. That would be something I could see them trying to do, somebody with some control. Orioles, definitely going to be sellers. Athletics and White Sox, absolutely sellers at the deadline as well. Looks like the Angels do get a run home on a sacrifice fly to center with d'Arnaud scoring. 3-1. Runner stays at second anyway. Rocker gives up his first run of the day. And Mike Trout coming up with a chance to tie it. This just seems like a spot where prime Mike Trout takes the Rangers deep and we're tied 3-3. This version of Mike Trout hitting .228. I don't know. Sounds like this is the type of Mike Trout that rolls over a fastball down the middle to the shortstop and ends the inning. Sad to see from a player who had such high highs in his career, but injuries have really sapped what talent he has left anyway. And this one flies to center. Does he tie it? Yes, he does. He channels old school Mike Trout and goes to center. That's impressive. Tied at 3. Brand new ball game. Wow. Turn back the clock for Mike Trout. 2-run homer to tie it in the third. And it's in his wheelhouse, too. Mike Trout was always a good low ball hitter. He didn't necessarily care for the strike up at the top of the zone, but always the ones down at the bottom of the zone, right at the knees, those were the ones he would always drive. And that pitch, right in his wheelhouse. And he didn't miss it. Raises his average on that one to 231. Good job, Mike Trout. Even as a Rangers fan, he's been a Ranger killer for years. It's good to see him still have it every now and again. Looks like a couple more have gone final here. Guardians beat the Astros 4-2. Twins beat the Cubs. Royals beat the Pirates. Nationals final 8-2 over the Cardinals now. Almost all the games come in final now. That leaves us with 3 games going. Braves 4-0 over the A's. Diamondbacks just add another run, 2-0 over the Pirates. Or excuse me, over the Padres. And then Mike Trout just tied it for the Angels against the Rangers. Another base hit for the Angels. Kumar Rocker starting to get a little... Oh, no, it was a walk. Maybe the home run caused him some trouble here. He is still a young pitcher. There's a reason why he has a 5.8 ERA. That ERA probably going to go up. I don't think he's going to go very long in this game. I think best case scenario at 44 pitches, he probably goes 6 at the longest. More likely, probably 5 at this rate. Rangers probably pull him with 85 pitches through 5 innings, if I had to guess. Joe Adell coming up, probably their best hitter in the bottom half of their lineup. Hitting 246. Rocker missing inside there. Mr. AC Milan, okay. If you were the Jays, what trades would you make, brother? Let's go ahead and do some Toronto Blue Jays trades. Like I said, if you guys want me to do some trades for you guys, please feel free to send me which team and maybe a player you want me to target. If I'm the Blue Jays, to me, they need an ace more than anything else. I don't think a 2-3 starter makes a difference for them as far as their success in the postseason. Might help them win a wild card spot or win the American League East. But I think if they're trying to make a difference on their roster, the biggest change is going to have to come with an ace on this team. There aren't too many available. So starting with that in mind, I would look for players that might not be necessarily available or at least rumored to be available from other clubs. So I would start with the Minnesota Twins first and just see what it would take to get a Joe Ryan out of Minnesota. I view him as a more high-end number 2 in a rotation, but he would be better than anything the Jays have right now in their rotation. So you get Joe Ryan. Okay, so that's your first piece. Twins, they're not necessarily worried about the 20 years old and under like the Marlins are. So if you're looking for an ace, Joe Ryan would be your piece here. Namala is said to be off limits. So if he is off limits, you're not going for a 30-year-old guy here in Luke's. I know a lot of Blue Jays fans think he's a good piece to put in here. Not me. I think Yasevich would probably be piece number 1. Kasevich would have to be in this deal. Tiedemann would have to be in this deal. And then Martinez would probably have to be in this deal as well. And I still don't think we're close. Yeah, we're still 22 away. So if you take out Tiedemann, you take out Martinez, and you put in Namala, how close do you get? You're still not close. So I don't think Joe Ryan would be a very gettable piece for you. Now, Pablo Lopez would be a better one, but again, they're not going to trade him until he rehabs his value until the offseason. So that would be an interesting one for Joe Ryan. Now, let's say you don't go just prospects. Let's say you decide the Twins want a major leaguer back in return. Remember the Wyatt Langford discussion we had with the Rangers? What would be the equivalent of that for the Twins and the Blue Jays? So, a young piece, Barger would make some sense. Clement, I don't think he really fits the timelines here. Guerrero signed a... no, that doesn't make sense. Kirk, no. Luke's makes a little bit more sense in that light, but still not enough value. So I think Barger would probably be your guy that you'd have to include in this deal. Yasevich and Tiedemann. And then Kasevich. Let's see how close we get with those 4. You're still light. And honestly, I don't think the Blue Jays would do it. So, where else could they go for a lower cost ace at the deadline? I think this in the offseason is when they're going to try to go after a starter in free agency. So, where could they go? Giants aren't going to be looking to sell, but that would be an interesting team to go after for some of their starters. Diamondbacks, we've already done Gallen and Kelly, so you can kind of get an eyeball for what they would have to ask for in return from the Blue Jays. Who would be another starter that kind of fits that mold of an ace that could move? Braves for Chris Sale. You don't really need him in the 162. He just got injured recently, but he is expected back at some point in the second half. Not necessarily right after the deadline, but maybe mid-August, maybe start of September. So say you go for the Braves, you go for the starting pitcher, salary, and then Chris Sale. Very low value, but you're going to have to overpay if you're the Blue Jays to get him. You're working with your former GM there at Alex Anthopoulos in Atlanta, so you're going to have to give up something of value here in return. Say you go at Johnny King. That'd be an interesting piece. Kasevich. Let's look at the Blue Jays prospects real quick. What would make sense for them? How's Kasevich doing? AAA hitting 5 games only so far. Not really done much. Doesn't strike out though. That's good. I said AAA. No, that was 2 teams. High A, excuse me. 2 games, 3 games there. And A ball, he's very young still. But he's at AAA now. Is that just a rehab assignment then? Okay, so there we go. That makes more sense. Last year, 325 at AAA in 41 games. Doesn't strike out a whole lot. Okay, so Kasevich has potential. Okay. But again, that's a lot more value than what Chris Sale is worth right now, including his salary. And you're already over that with King. So if you're the Braves, again, thought process here being saving money. You need an ace, you get Chris Sale. They're not going to give you any other starters. But they may give you Austin Riley to the Blue Jays. Now that gets interesting. Now if you include a Kasevich in this deal to the Braves, You include a Yasevich in this deal to the Braves. That's a deal I could see. And then maybe a lottery ticket, like a really cheap lottery ticket here. Like a 17-year-old catcher, something like that. 17-year-old outfielder. I think your value's a little off here. But the Braves, you go to the majors, you go to guys that are about to expire on their deal. Acuna, or not Acuna, but Osuna maybe. Bummer, maybe. Jimenez, Eli White, no. Pierce Johnson. I don't know about that one. Pierce Johnson does have some flexibility. This would save the Braves all kinds of money, is another impetus of this deal. They save tons of money on all three of those players. And you're getting 5 pieces back if you're the Braves. You're getting 2 lottery tickets back and 3 real prospects. Kasevich probably takes over as your shortstop next season with Profar, Manning left. Or playing third base now that you've traded Austin Riley. Yasevich starts in your rotation probably around this time next year. King probably needs a little bit more time, but could be a piece in your future. And then, of course, the lottery tickets. Osuna, to me, this is kind of a salary move because he's not worth much in the open market right now. You offload him. Chris Sale, he's not going to be available until September, and he's got 1 year left on his deal. That's the harder piece to move for the Braves because I think he's a longer term. He's the type of pitcher that the Braves really need right now. And while Yasevich could help them out, I don't think it necessarily moves the needle enough for them for the following season. But this season, it makes all the sense in the world. Riley, giving off of his great, and I mean great contract, that's the tough thing here. I think you'd have to overpay to get rid of that deal. And taking Osuna makes some sense here as kind of the balance for taking on that salary, or taking on Riley's great deal. You take on the bad deal that's left for Osuna, even though he's expiring. I don't know. You get 2 bats, 1 underperforming, 1 great one. You get 1 pitcher that's not going to be available until September. So you put him on the 60-day IL and live with it. Dating back to when he was injured with the Braves so that you can call him up earlier. I don't know. Let's say they didn't go Kasevich, or they didn't go Austin Riley in this deal. You take out Yasevich, you take out the lottery tickets here. I think Kasevich would be the piece they would want in return here. But the Blue Jays would need a little more value coming back to them in this deal. So while Osuna has positive value, I don't think he actually does in reality in real life. So the surplus for the Braves going back to the Blue Jays, I'm looking for around $5 million value. Elder again could be the ballast in this deal, but again, that's 2 pieces out of your major league staff coming out that you need help with in that rotation more than anything else. This doesn't give you the caps or the salary savings that you really need to make a difference to go after anybody in free agency. So would I do this deal if I'm Atlanta? I mean, I still love Kasevich, don't get me wrong, but this trade still doesn't make sense even though the value is definitely on the Braves' side. And I think he's the insurance policy if Bichette leaves. I think he's your starter at short next year anyway. So if you take him out, you take out Elder, you throw in one of those lottery tickets once again from the Blue Jays. I don't know, Sanchez, something like that. That could be a deal that makes some sense. It is a minor overpay, but you're going to have to convince the Braves to do it. Would I do this if I'm the Braves? I'd still say I'd want 1 more lottery ticket, I think, out of this deal. Because I'm getting no major leaguers back. I'm expecting to compete next year. The only reason I make this deal is to save money on Chris Sale's deal this year and save money on next year's Chris Sale deal and Ozuna's money this year. I want a Chris Sale type pitcher next year, and I want a Chris Sale type pitcher on Chris Sale's contract next year. So is it worth giving up a player already signed to a deal for next season for what you're really looking for in exchange for futures, which is what they are? King, bright future, but future. Same thing with the lottery ticket. Is it worth that type of a deal? If I'm the Braves, I probably lean no. If I'm the Blue Jays, I'm probably all over this like white on rice. I mean, I get a starting pitcher, an ace-level starter, Cy Young winner, multiple Cy Young winner, resurgent year, having a good year before the injury. And then Ozuna, if he does get hot again, basically is a freebie in this deal. I say yes all day long if I'm the Blue Jays. But if I'm the Braves, I'd probably still lean no because I still want Chris Sale on that contract next season when I expect to compete. But not a bad deal overall. Check in on the scorecard a little bit. Both teams scored once again. Let's see how they scored real quick. We left off with the home run by Mike Trout. Joe Adell came back and scored Taylor Ward on a double. So Joe Adell did come through on having a great year there for the Angels. Good developing player there for them. Fielder's choice. Langford scores. Berger to second. Okay. 4-4. And we still got a runner on second here. Oh, Rangers look like they just took the lead on a Josh Smith something. Let's see what it is. Base hit to right. Ground ball to right field. Okay, so it's another runner on second, and now Corey Seager is up. Kind of a crazy game so far. Texas jumps out to a 3-0 lead. The Angels tie it with a 4-run fourth, including a 2-run home run with a classic turn back the clock Mike Trout home run. And a ball right in a sweet spot at the bottom of the zone. And now Texas claws back with 2 more here in the fourth. An offense that certainly was struggling. Kyle Hendricks is coming out. They're going with Brock Burke. Lefty on lefty change here. Brock Burke does not have a good track record in this ballpark with Texas and the Angels anyway when he was playing for Texas. Maybe it'll work in the opposite way this way for him. Curious decision here. What is his ERA on the year anyway? 3.79, so he is a good pitcher. I remember years and years ago he was acquired in that Jurickson Profar deal that sent Profar to the A's. The Rangers got Burke from the Rays anyway. The Rays got a bunch of different pieces anyway from both teams in that deal. A lot of minor leaguers moving all over the place in that 3-team deal. I think it turned out to be 4-team if I remember correctly. There's at least 3. I know the A's, the Rays, and Texas. But I can't remember if another team came in there and threw a prospect in there to make the deal work for both sides. Either way, Texas back in front 5-4 with Corey Seager up to bat now. Let's check in on some scores from around the league real quick. There's only 3 games still going on. Braves still winning 4-2. That hasn't updated. It says top of the second. They're not in the top of the second right now. 6-0 now. Okay, in the bottom of the third. That makes more sense. How did they score those last 2? Austin Riley home run. Riley and Olsen both 2 for 2. You can see why the Braves probably love having those guys on their roster. I wouldn't try to move either one of them. I would look for ways to convince ownership to find ways to increase our budget so we can add pitching more than anything else this offseason. I'd be looking to trade Ozuna. Albie's having a rough year down at 222. Same thing for Harris. Those are the contracts right now that are kind of hurting him a little bit. Albie's less so because he still has his good days, but Harris is just a little rough this year. Let's check on some of the other games real quick. Arizona now 6-0 over the Padres. James McCann hit a homer. Suarez hit number 29. Perdomo hits a grand slam in the 5th. Okay. And Fott's only at 43 pitches through 4 innings so far, so he could go deep in that one. One-two count on the Corey Seager here. Let us know in the comment section what trade you'd like to see us try to do next. Give us a team, a player, or something. Got about 20 of you guys with us right now. Be sure to hit that thumbs up at the bottom of the video. When we do go live, turn that bell on and hit that subscribe button. You'll be notified when we're live. We'll be live every single night leading up to the MLB trade deadline. We'll do our power rankings towards the end of the evening here tonight. Grounder to shortstop, and that should end the inning, it looks like. Yep, that's it. So the Rangers take the lead, 5-4 going to the bottom of the 4th. Let's go ahead and go back to our trades here and just see if we can come up with another one. No Phillies fans, no Mets fans, no Dodgers fans. Let's see, who would be an interesting one? Brewers are said to be in on Adolis Garcia, but I don't think he's going to be moved. If they're looking for a player like Adolis, there's not really one really like Adolis on the market. Josh Naylor, I guess, but he's more of a first base DH. Who else could we do a trade with? We haven't really done too many Orioles trades. Let's look and see what they have available. Looking at their major league roster, pieces that they may be wanting to get off of. Okay. Tyler O'Neill seen as a negative contract nowadays, especially with that injury that he had. Expiring deals. Eflin, Laureano, I think would be a great ad for somebody this year. His numbers are very good. If you're looking for cheap offense, there's worse ways to improve offensively. Morton, not worth the trouble. Mullins, we've done some Mullins trades. Maybe he'd be good for the Brewers. We could do Ramon Laureano to the Brewers in exchange for a couple of small minor leaguers. That would make some sense. Let's go a little bit bigger game shopping here. Let's say we're going after some high price pieces that nobody's really looking at. Tyler O'Neill to the Rangers. I want no part of that if I'm the Rangers. Too much salary pushes you into the tax. The only way you do that trade is if they take back Jock Peterson, honestly, at this point. But let's go ahead and show you what it would look like. There's no reason the Orioles would do this anyway, but just for kicks and giggles. Basically, equal value, equal bad deals. Jock Peterson going to have only 1 year left is the advantage there for the Orioles. They get out of the deal a little bit quicker. For the Rangers, they basically don't add on more negative salary. They take on an extra year of salary is where the difference is there for the Rangers. And they buy a healthy bat who's having a slightly better season than Jock Peterson. Tyler O'Neill and O'Hearn. O'Hearn I've heard a lot to the West Coast, not too much to Texas. But if the Rangers went for O'Hearn, let's see, what is his value? Around 5.10 somewhere in there nowadays? Yeah, 5. So you include O'Hearn in this deal. You go back to the Rangers. Again, they're going to want something of decent value back. Dreiling would make sense. And I think that's already an overpay. Would I do the trade if I'm either team? Probably not. Mainly because of these two negative assets. Now, if you take both of those out of there, O'Hearn for Dreiling straight up, it's at least a starting point for a conversation, but I don't think O'Hearn really moves the needle enough for Texas for this type of a deal. I think if they're going for an impact hitter on the market, I think they're going to go a little bit bigger game hunting than Ryan O'Hearn. I think if they're going to do this type of a trade, they'll just stand pat rather than actually make a move. Because why deplete your farm system even further from a player who's, yes, having some struggles at the time, but could still be a bright future piece for you down the line for Ryan O'Hearn, who may or may not be this type of a productive hitter next off season or this upcoming season. I just don't see the impetus for the trade for the Rangers. I'd rather go with Jock Peterson and whoever you're going to roll out there at DH if Jock doesn't work out. Most likely Josh Smith, Ezekiel Duran, Alejandro Ozuna, Sam Haggerty. I'd rather go with that bunch than make the trade here of Dylan Dreiling for Ryan O'Hearn. I don't think it moves the needle enough. Does it improve them? Yes. Would he be better than the other options? Yes. But is it enough of an improvement to really give up on the future of Dreiling or any other piece that you might include in this deal? Probably not. And the Angels tied it. Wow. What'd they do? Home run? Yep, d'Arnaud. Home run, 5-5. Yeesh. If I'm the Rangers, I'd probably pull Kumar after this inning. I know you're looking for, depth. I know you're looking for length out of him, but I just don't do it here. I think their offense is showing they can come through tonight, but you need somebody to shut down the Angels this evening. Rocker's giving up too many home runs today. Steven, welcome back. Mike, is there a middle reliever that the Mets could get without giving up Ronnie Mauricio? A middle reliever? There's tons of them without giving up Mauricio. I think there's lots of guys that you could try to target here. Let's go ahead and clear this trade out. Let's go to the Mets. Like I said, I think the biggest need for the Mets is an ace, but if you're looking for a middle reliever, you could literally go anywhere for it. I think if you went to the Angels, you could do Kenley Jansen as kind of a 8th inning setup guy. If you're looking for a middle reliever, that tells me more of a 5th through 7th inning guy. If you're looking for a setup guy, an 8th inning guy, I think you're looking for more of a closer type of a pitcher, a Cade Smith, an Emmanuel Clase, a Kenley Jansen, a Griffin Jacks, a Johan Durans, Aroldis Chapman, that type of a player. So if you're looking for a middle reliever, those guys are a dime a dozen in the league. But if I'm looking for a setup guy, which I think is more your question there, a high leverage guy that you can employ in the 7th inning in a bases loaded 2-out situation against Shohei Ohtani, who do you trust in that situation? I think you're looking for that type of an arm. I think the Mets could really use that type of an arm, honestly. Where could they go? Helsley from the Cardinals makes a lot of sense. Doval from the Giants, although I don't think they would move him. We've talked about Clase quite a bit. What is the website you use to see if trades work? This is baseballtradevalues.com. It used to be free when I first found the site, but nowadays it is a paid site to be able to use the simulator, I do believe. But with as much as I use it just to have fun anyway when I'm not doing my live or whatever. But just to kind of unwind. This is the kind of thing I did for fun on pen and paper since I was, I don't know, 5 years old. My dream job at that age was to be the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks back then. And, when it was baseball season, it was the GM of the Texas Rangers. When it was football season, it was to be the GM of the Dallas Cowboys. It was hockey season, it was GM of the Dallas Stars. Those kinds of things. And, as I grew up, I realized it was highly unlikely that I would ever get those jobs. But it still kind of sticks with me. Still write on the page, send, receive on one side of the page and just write it out by hand. Nowadays, there's so many good calculators out there, you don't have to do it by hand. Fanspo for the NBA. You got baseball trade values for baseball. Hockey, you have Puckpedia. Football really doesn't have a calculator out there that works great out there as far as what value is for players. But overthecap.com has one, and Fanspo has another one. But those are more just salary, or what fits as far as salaries more than anything else, not what an actual player's value is worth. Outside of doing the 2K stuff on PlayStation or whatever, there really was no calculator for these types of things. And now you have really great sites. Even RealGM was one of the first ones I ever did for basketball before Fanspo and even before ESPN Trade Machine. RealGM.com was a site I used quite a bit. But nowadays, I pretty much use Fanspo for basketball, baseball trade values for baseball. Puckpedia was great. But before Puckpedia, there was a site called Cap Friendly that was great as far as all the salary cap information you'd ever want to know. Didn't necessarily give you player values or anything like that, but that was actually bought by an NHL team. I believe it was the Washington Capitals who bought the website Cap Friendly and use it now as proprietary information. You can't access it. So that's why Puckpedia went from a stats site primarily to a GM site as well. Spotrac has a version of this for all four sports, but it's nowhere near the value calculator that this is. This site does a great job calculating what players' values actually are, and so you can make trades without having to play 2K or anything like that, and doing unrealistic machines or anything like that. This is updated all the time, and so it's a lot more accurate and gives you a lot better information. Now, is it the end-all, be-all of what values are for players? Absolutely not. I'm sure there are internal systems for a lot of teams that value different players differently. For instance, we don't know what the makeup of these players are when we're just looking at numbers on a screen. We don't know how well they've been throwing in the last 2-3 months. Now, we can look up their stats, we can look up their story, but we have no idea about the background of scouting. We have no idea about the internal value of what the dollar value is to an owner to be able to spend or not spend at the deadline, to be able to save money on tax or spend money into the tax to try to win. Those things all impact the value of trades differently when you go to make these types of simulations. So kind of keep that in mind when you're making some trades out there. I need Kumar Rocker to keep getting better. I got an auto card of him. That would be a good thing for you. I think Kumar Rocker will get better, but he's still working up the kinks to the major league level. Remember, he's only thrown like 200 major league inning or 200 professional innings in his career, so he's basically doing his development at the major league level. It's probably going to take a year or 2 or 3 for him to ever reach that potential, and by then, there'll only be a couple years left to arbitration. Will the Rangers have used him too early rather than developing him in the minors? All those are valid questions, but I think the Rangers decided right now to add him to the Major League roster and allow him to learn at the Major League level since they need arms there. All right, so the Mets. Your question, Steven, was a middle reliever. I'm guessing you're asking for more of a setup guy in front of Diaz, that kind of a thing, 7th, 8th inning guy that you can deploy everywhere. We talked a little bit about closers, Helsley, Clase, Cade Smith. Mariners aren't trading anybody. You could go Marlins for a couple of guys there. Finnegan from the Nationals. Orioles for Bautista would be an interesting one. Heel, if you were the Rangers GM before you get off today, assuming it goes to plan, what are a few moves you would do to get the Rangers to the postseason? Keep in mind they have to be realistic. There's a couple of ways I would go about it. If I'm Chris Young and I'm Bruce Bochy, I'm uber competitive and I believe I have a World Series team, I'm not necessarily worried about what the future looks like 3, 4, 5 years from now. I don't have a lot of talent left in my minor league system right now that's available to trade because I've had so many injuries on the AA roster and AAA roster. There's not a lot of guys that you could trade from that group. So the only guys that really move the needle for big trades when there's not really big names out there in the trade market is Wyatt Langford, would be Sebastian Walcott, players like that. And I'm very loath to trade Sebastian Walcott. I think he has superstar written all over him. Wyatt Langford, meanwhile, I thought had the same thing written all over him. I thought he was going to be right there with Corey Seager at the beginning of the year, and I still think he's going to be a great player. but I need players who are going to produce and help me win a title this year because I believe I have a top 3 rotation in the game who's performed at the best in baseball so far this season. My bullpen's the best in the game right now over the past couple of months. At a certain point, I've got to start buying into how good the pitching has been and just get this team some productive offensive players. And taking a piece like Wyatt Langford, who's underperforming, yes, this year, but still has a massive ceiling, split it up into, say, 3, 4, 5 pieces, and just allow those pieces to grow, a couple of them at the minor league level, a couple of them help you at the major league level, and just diversify the talent there, I think would be a great way to go. But I think more realistically, what I would like to see them do is just add around the periphery of this team. First, adding a closer, which would mean trading away one of those injured players at the AA level, a top 100 guy in Alejandro Rosario, to the Twins. I'd probably include Alejandro Osuna, who's on the Major League roster, as a healthy component to kind of overpay to make the deal happen, to kind of give a closer there. But let's go back to kind of finish up Steven's question here. What the team would look like? The site shows you what the trades look like specifically, but they don't show what your roster would look like. Now, I can show you a string of trades and do them all in a row and then kind of develop the lineup for you guys. I can do that here in just a minute for you. But let's go ahead and do this trade here. I want to do Bautista from the Orioles to the Mets. So we're looking for relief pitchers. Bautista has a value of 24, 2 years left after this year. So what would the Mets have to give up? I think Beatty would probably be the most likely piece first. You're trying not to include Mauricio. I think they'll go for a third baseman guy, kind of like a Bregman type in the offseason. That's why I'm not too worried about losing Beatty. They have Vientos, who's had his ups and downs this year as well, named to kind of keep an eye on at the deadline if they do something even bigger. Hold on. It's just showing me majors. I was wondering where everybody was. Take out Beatty, back out again. Okay. Let's go back. Reimer at 20 years old. Sproat has been getting some mentions as well. I like Clifford's approach. Orioles need pitching. They've really struggled developing pitching more than anything else. So say they put Sproat in this deal as the pitcher. I love Drew Gilbert as a hitter. You don't want to lose Mauricio because he's starting to hit? Okay. You still need about another 6 in value here. So where are you going to get the 6? Page 2, Boston Barrow. Boom. There's your deal. Felix Bautista for Sproat, Gilbert, and Barrow. If I get an ace, I do this deal in a heartbeat if I'm the Mets, because then I become right on the level of the LA Dodgers to win the series this year. But I need an ace more than anything else. I need an ace. I would do this deal if I get an ace along with it. So say you do the Zach Gallen trade, or you do the Merrill Kelly trade. That might be a little lesser option, but you get my point. You go for an ace, you get one, you make this trade, you take the ball and run with it. Let's validate it, post it. I really like that deal from both sides. Orioles get a starter they can hope on, 2 position player prospects that they really need to kind of replenish their farm system with all the promotions that they've had and trades from within their system. And they kind of retool for next year and maybe even trade one of those pieces in the offseason to try to add another starter in the offseason. They can go after a closer. They can move one of their guys that's in the 7th, 8th inning role now and develop him as a closer during the year. But that would be one trade I'd try to make if I'm the Mets. Okay, Heel, you asked about kind of a series of trades that I would make to kind of make this team as best as I could before the deadline. So putting my GM hat on for the Texas Rangers, where would I go first? Well, the first thing I need is a closer. I would want to look at the assets that I have to work with. My trade assets here, outside of Walcott and Langford, of course. Garcia doesn't really move the needle for a lot of teams out there. He's more valuable to me because of the 4 years of control as a bullpen guy. I'm not trading Smith. Leiter's too valuable to me. Castillo's the same thing. I might move Young if I get a third baseman long term for the Rangers, but other than that, I'm holding on to him. The first guy that becomes available is Alejandro Rosario at 15. Malcolm Moore is the long-term answer currently at catcher, but I don't think they're necessarily beholden to that if they get bowled over for an offer. Latz is too valuable in the bullpen right now to move. I'm not moving him. Dreiling could easily be moved since he's underperforming in the, I think, single A level, but could have a bright future going forward because, again, his ceiling is a lot higher than what he's shown on the field. Drake's a good performer at the Double A level. As soon as already at the Major League level, he's another asset you could trade. DeVio, same thing. Berger has 3 more years, and cost control is the valuable part for him. Santos, another valuable piece, but injured. Bradford, not trading due to injury. I'd rather trade Santos. He's just about to be back on the minor league side here in the next couple of weeks. Brad's having a great Double A season. Tiger is about a year away from having a great Double A season. So, those are our assets to trade. So where do we go to kind of fit the pieces that we have? Unless you trade Walcott or Langford, you're not getting anything above, say, like a 23, 24 piece. So kind of keep that in mind if you're looking for a trade. So with that in mind, if I'm trying to go cheap and the Red Sox are selling, I'm all over the Red Sox like white on rice. I want Aroldis Chapman. I want Alex Bregman. Those would be the pieces I'd try to get. I think more likely the Red Sox are going to be buyers, or at least guys that stand pat at the deadline. So while the Red Sox have what I really need, I don't think they're going to be offering the pieces that I need to at the trade deadline. So scratch the Red Sox. The next team that I'd probably go to is the Minnesota Twins. And it all depends, to me, on Byron Buxton's health. You also have Johan Duran. Oh, click the Tigers, not Twins. Johan Duran is the one piece that I've been really wanting from the Twins for the better part of a year now. Solves the issue in the 9th for the Rangers. So say you go after him. Twins are said to be wanting some long-term assets, so they're not going to want major leaguers back, really. So, for instance, if Colby Bradford was healthy, that would not be a fit here. But Dreiling could be an interesting piece, although they have 2 really supreme outfielders coming up to the major league level soon. Buxton would probably have to move at some point for them as well, but for right now he stays. You'd probably be looking at Drake, or probably Drake, honestly, in this deal to be one of the headliners. Osuna would probably be a piece that you'd have to consider. But Rosario, as the injured piece in this deal, probably gets the ball moving first. Santos, another lottery ticket, but you're already at value there. And then you're going to need probably a 2-3 million player. Say you include Hageman in this deal. Validate the trade. Would I do this trade if I'm the Rangers? I would, but I would look for something better first. So I'm going to keep that one in my back pocket as a, hey, I have this deal to go for if that's all I can find at the deadline. Clear out the trade. Let's go back to the Rangers. If I'm the Rangers, like I said, I truly believe I have my chance to win is right now. I have DeGrom, I have Eovaldi under contract. I'd probably have a 2 to 3 year window. Think of the way Nico Harrison has viewed the Dallas Mavericks in his 3-year window. I'm only here for 3 more years. I view this as my title window. So the heck with the future. That's kind of what we're doing here with the Wyatt Langford trade. Is not necessarily that my tenure as the GM would be over in 3 years. It's just that the talent on the roster is only going to be good for that 2 to 3 year window. So while the other pieces that I would have, like a Wyatt Langford, would be valuable after that point, and incredibly valuable to my organization because of that point, they make them expendable if they're not producing in the current, championship window for the Rangers. Why settle for half of what you could have now at a whole value than have the whole value later on when your roster isn't nearly as good and you're in a kind of a rebuilding 2-3-4 situation in your own division? I think the best way to go for the Rangers, if they're trying to win now and in the next 2 years, is to accumulate players playing at their best right now and for the next 2 or 3 years. Wyatt Langford should be the player that we all hope he will be eventually, a superstar level player, and so I want a superstar caliber return as well. Doesn't mean I have to necessarily give up on the future. I might move some of the assets from Wyatt Langford, who's valued at say 63, and divvy it up, say among 4 players at 15 valuation each. 2 of those guys can be minor leaguers, and then 2 of those guys can be impactful major league additions right now. One of those pieces could be Duran from the Minnesota Twins. I think Wyatt Langford would kind of fit what the Twins are looking for, an available player that kind of fits the window of what their outfield would look like with Jenkins and with Rodriguez as well. So say you trade Langford to the Twins. There he is. Okay. Actually, let me pull up 3 teams first because I'm going somewhere with this one. So the Twins are the team you trade Langford to. Boom. Now, Twins, you're looking for major league pieces back that kind of fit your timeline right now. Buxton, as long as his hand is fine, would be the piece that comes back and takes Wyatt Langford's spot in the outfield, and he's producing better this year. Again, turning a piece that's not performing right now into a piece that is performing right now, assuming, of course, his health after being hit in the hand today. Duran solves my need for a high-end closer. To me, he's a top 5 closer in the game right now. Now I've locked up my bullpen. My pitching staff looks good going into this year, going into the postseason. I've got my center fielder. I've got some depth out there as well, and I've still got more value left on Wyatt Langford. That would be one way to do it, and you'd still be able to go to another team and get another piece. But now with the injury to Byron Buxton, say his hand injury is serious. He fractured a pinky or whatever, and he's not going to be the same hitter. Okay, we can't do Byron Buxton. Take him out. You're still getting Duran. You still have all kinds of value coming back to you. What could you do then? Well, the Twins are trying to save money because they got the new ownership. They're trying to find new ownership. So what would make them more appealing? Joe Ryan's only got 2 years left after this season. Wyatt Langford's got 4 years left after this season. So you're getting a longer-term asset there. That's the first part here. And then Carlos Correa comes on board. Now for the Rangers, you don't necessarily want to attach a negative asset to them. But by including a guy like Jock Peterson, you free up all kinds of money for free agency after this season as well. This contract, let's be honest, did not work. So now you're basically wiping out the contracts there. You may still have to include a little bit more salary one way or the other to make it work for Texas, stay underneath the tax, to keep the ownership happy there, and to keep the tax bill low going into the future. I don't think Texas is afraid of going into the tax next year, but this year they want to reset their clock. So to do that, you include Jock Peterson in this deal. Now your value, you're still nowhere close. You still got 18 mil that you got left coming back to you. You got a bat to kind of help out over at third base. You got Josh Young still on this roster, so if it doesn't work out at third base, obviously Carlos Correa moves over to DH. But you got your closer. You got a starting pitcher that goes right behind DeGrom and Eovaldi. My rotation for the postseason this year, 1 DeGrom, 2 Eovaldi, 3 Ryan, 4 Molly anyway, and then you still have Leiter and Rocker developing. You even allow Kumar Rocker, who we just talked about, who's struggling at the major league level, kind of developing, allow him that time at AAA. Show him how to pitch without getting worn out and needing pickle juice after 4 innings. That type of thing is where he really needs to grow. Showing the ability to trust his pitches and not just throw the same 2 pitches all game long like we saw in an earlier start the season against Tampa Bay. He's still learning those things. He's learning how to pitch, how to trust his stuff, how to maintain his body. And doing that at the AAA level, I think would be best for his development long term. However, this gives the Rangers a great 1-2-3 in the rotation, a great closer, so the pitching staff that's best in the majors gets even better by a significant margin, by far getting probably one of the best closers that anybody's going to get at the deadline. You still get Carlos Correa as a bat. The -61, the reason why that's there is because of the salary that's due to him the next 4 years. And yes, I still have more money to spend after the season because I got Gray coming off the books. Peterson's no longer going to be here. Adolis likely is going to be gone at some point in the next year or two. So they're going to have some money coming off the books relatively soon. But this year would be a great option for them. So let's finish out this trade. Sorry. Ouch, that hurt. me check on scores real quick before we finish it. Angels have taken a 6-5 lead. Let me update the page here. How'd they score the 6th run? Another Mike Trout home run? Yikes. Did they finally take Kumar out? Yes, they did. 3 home runs, 2 of them to Mike Trout. His ERA goes from 5.8 to 6.34. It's time for him to go back down to the minors. Okay. Not saying he can't do it at the major league level if he was on a team like the Rockies, but this is a team that's trying to win a series this year in a very winnable American League. Their pitching staff has been great, with the exception of him and Jack Leiter from time to time having their young pitcher rookie foibles, if you will. Leiter's shown the ability to handle some of those a lot better than Kumar Rocker, which is why Rocker, to me, needs to be at AAA. So let's get back to our move here. We're trading Langford. We're filling his spot in the lineup somehow. So where are we going to go to get another fill-in here? Well, a team that I mentioned before in the Atlanta Braves. This could be the year where they decide, hey, I want to offload a little bit of salary so I have some flexibility to add some starting pitching for once. That was their issue this offseason. Could very well be the direction they decide to go. If you're bringing in Carlos Correa, I don't think Austin Riley would be the get for the Rangers. However, somebody who does really fit is Matt Olson. You trade Matt Olson in this deal, he goes over to Texas. You probably move Riley in this deal over to first base to kind of make things work if you're Atlanta. Third base, you then could probably move Josh Young to the Atlanta Braves. Young plays third, Riley plays first. But I'm still not getting equal value for what I'm giving up. So I would still need more. See how the value of trading one of your most valuable assets in Wyatt Langford, splitting up that value of 63 into so many different pieces works for you? Now, to me, there'd still have to be salary retention for this to make sense for the Rangers, which might be part of the return for the Rangers here. The difference right now, they're sending out 56, they're taking back 44. Say you take back 12, that would equal out what the Rangers could get in return here. Twins still need to add more to this trade to make it make sense for them because of what they're doing here. So they got 28 left that they need to equal out. So where could they get their 28? Well, Buxton was my option here. But with him being injured, you could go the young outfielder Emmanuel Rodriguez. Just kind of show you what the Twins have in their future. This is what they're so high on right now. Walker Jenkins, hitting in Double-A right now, 270. Has superstar written all over him, much like Wyatt Langford does. Look at those strikeouts. Tiny. Look at those walks. Right along with them, almost a 1-to-1 rate. OPS, 821 in 3 teams. Double-A this year, 270. 805 OPS. He's producing even at the Double-A level, which is really where you see hitters and pitchers start to make it or break it. And he's still producing. Now, Rodriguez is at the Triple-A level. 248 average, 838 OPS in 40 games. Strikeouts are a concern for me. He's almost a 1-to-2 strikeout rate. But the walks are very strong. Home runs, power is there. The strikeout rate has to come down, though. That could be a return there. But again, I'm in contention right now. I want to win right now. Brooks Lee. We could do Royce Lewis. In fact, that could be the piece there. If I'm the Rangers, or excuse me, if I'm the Braves, I want starting pitching in return. You could go Pablo Lopez in this deal. That would make even less sense down the road because, again, it doesn't make much sense for the Twins to trade him right now. The only thing I wish is there was 4 teams. Once you expand it past 3, those trades almost never happen in baseball anyway. Let's say the Rangers hold on to Young. They use him in a different trade as a trade asset now. Now the value is about right. You could use Young to add an outfielder from somewhere. You've addressed your offense with 2 big pickups. You've added an ace on your staff and a high leverage closer and gotten off of the contract of Jock Peterson. Now if you take a 15-ish piece from Minnesota, send him to Atlanta, I think starting pitcher is where they would prefer that to be. Say you go with Dasan Hill, maybe. Single A, 12 games, 36 innings, 54 strikeouts. Walks are a bit of an issue, so control is a problem for him. But he's a lefty, and he's young, so his control will get better. So that could be a piece for them. So say Hill goes to the Braves. And then you're looking on the Major League roster. For a piece that goes back to the Braves that makes sense around 5. Paddock, but he's expiring. Stewart, no. Pablo Lopez really does fit, but again, they're going to hold on to his value until the offseason. Then they'll make a move. Larnach, Ober could make some sense to the Braves. And then the Braves throw like Elder back the other direction. That might make the trade work. If you're the Twins, would you make this trade? You get Langford's future, 4 years of control. You get off the money for Carlos Correa by about 5 years. You take back only 1 year of payroll on Jock Peterson. And you're getting a depth arm starter reliever in Bryce Elder. You give up a closer, 2 years of control after this one. Joe Ryan, ace starter, 2 years of control. You give up Carlos Correa and all that money when your ownership is trying to be changed and you're trying to save money for your future. You give up Bailey Ober, who was a good starting pitcher for you last year, really has declined as far as an asset, and you try to flip him for something right now. Maybe you go for something a little bit better than Elder in return. Maybe. Dasan Hill would be a really valuable piece for the Braves. Maybe you just take out Elder and Ober both. And from the Twins, you send Woods Richardson. I don't think the Twins still believe in him a whole lot. They're just starting out with him. Cole Sands in the bullpen. Austin Martin. France, no, none of those make sense. Danny Colomb, if he had more years left, would make some sense, but he doesn't. Jose Miranda, I almost forgot about you. Isn't he injured right now? Tonkin, I remember him. Okay. Let's say you don't make this a 3-team deal. Let's clear it out. 2-team trade. Say it's 2 separate deals. One with the Rangers, one with the Braves. or one with the Rangers and Twins, one with the Rangers and Braves. So to the Twins, you go. You say Wyatt to the Twins. The Twins give you page 1. Carlos Correa, Joe Ryan, Johan Duran. Rangers, meanwhile, give up Jock Peterson, now we're getting close to this deal. We need about 19 more value here. Oh, he's just in the minors? Okay. To make the money work on the deal, maybe unload John Gray. Just kind of as a here, get off our money. That way we can take on money in another deal kind of a trade. I could see that. Foscue has no value left for the Rangers, but for the Twins, he could go ahead and start in their lineup right now and see what he's worth. Gives a 40-man roster spot to the Rangers and allows them to have some flexibility. Throw him in the deal. John Gray. Maybe they could even flip him for something else of value. And now you're at about 20 in value coming back. So what could the Rangers get for 20? So say you go the direction of Desan Hill for around 10. What's Culpepper's value? Culpepper, number 10. Great ERA so far this year. AA, 4 games, 11 innings, 12 strikeouts, 4 walks. So control can be problematic. Extreme ground ball pitcher. Texas loves that. Maybe. If you include Hill, you're not getting Pablo Lopez in this deal, even if you get Joe Ryan. They're waiting till the offseason. As much as I like the idea of Pablo Lopez, you ain't getting him at this point. So about 10 value is what we're looking for here. News on John Gray, by the way, as we just put him in this deal. He allowed run on 2 innings tonight for the minor league affiliate for the Rangers, as the Rangers just tied at 6-6. It looks like. Single by Higashioka again, and Wyatt scores. 2 for 2. Wyatt's hitting a little bit better. He's got 3 multi-hit games, I believe, since he's come back from injury. So maybe he's figuring things out offensively. Honestly, that would be the preference for Texas. As if he somehow goes on a tear and figures things out. That would be the preference. But if we were to kind of finish off this deal, you're not getting another Royce Lewis piece type out, or another type like Royce Lewis out of this deal. Take John Gray out. Go to the majors. Expiring deals. Harrison Bader as an outfielder, I think, would be a great get. He's been good for the Twins this year. And he has value if you decide to flip him after this trade anyway. So for the time being, Bader would come back. And 10 mil would go to Texas as well. So that would be part one of the trade. You get Duran, you get Ryan, Correa you take, and you get a prospect, and you get rid of some cash this year to take on future cash on Correa. And now you solved your need for a starting pitcher in the offseason, to where then you just have to acquire another bat in the offseason. Or if Correa hits, you don't really have to. You could go after Tucker, you could go after Bregman, and still stay beneath the tax if you made this move. Because Gray would be coming off your books. Bader would come off of your books, of course. Dunning would be off of your books. So that would be part one. Now, I wouldn't do this trade in a vacuum. For instance, if this was the only trade they made at the deadline, I wouldn't like it, because you're giving up your offense in the outfield for Correa, who already has that position filled with Josh Young right now. Then you have a roster cluster there. Josh Young ends up having to be flexed out to the outfield, or Josh Smith plays the outfield and Correa DHs. The lineup construction wouldn't make sense after this deal. So the only way it would make sense is if you bring in another outfielder, another first baseman, somebody along those lines. But you bring in Desan Hill because now you can flip him in a trade, because he has positive trade value. Remember how I said the Rangers had very little assets? That would be one trade that they could make. So let's kind of keep that in mind. Now, it won't keep the assets in this deal, but let's remember that deal here, because we got 10 surplus value anyway coming from Hill, and we got Bader on this deal around 2.2. So keep those in mind when we're trying to make moves. Honestly, you might even do more cash in this deal rather than take back Bader anyway. But I digress. Let's go on to part two. Part two of the deal, we go to the Atlanta Braves. If I can click on the right team. There we go. We go to the Rangers. Now remember, we just acquired Hill in the deal. We still have Josh Young in this deal as well. So for the Braves, they get out of some money here. For some reason my phone keeps buzzing anyway. All right, so we go get Matt Olson. You trade Josh Young here because now he doesn't have a spot. You already have Carlos Correa. Now you bring in Matt Olson. Your infield alignment looks Olson, Simeon, Seager, and Correa. You have Josh Smith that could probably play at third base or put Correa at DH, however you want to deploy him. Not picky. But either way, that would probably be your alignment. You'd still have Jake Berger at DH that you could flex out there as well, as kind of a depth option, play third, first, or DH. His bat is starting to warm up. And in that kind of a role, he's really succeeded. We saw that in years past with the Marlins. We saw that in years past with the White Sox. This year he was asked to do a lot over at first base for the Rangers, and that seemed to be a little bit too much for him. Not saying that he couldn't handle the role, but I'm just saying less of Berger seems to bring out more from him. So we'll see what this means. Maybe they even include him in a deal as well. He's got around a $4 million value here. All right, so you get Josh Young. You save yourself $20 million if you're the Braves. Rangers still need a outfielder, though, that helps them win this year. Is there anybody that makes sense for the outfield besides Acuna in this type of a deal? Austin Riley could play left field, and I think that's probably where I would go. Money then would become a big issue this season because, again, they want to reset their salary. If they or their tax threshold anyway. If they can get Atlanta to pay enough on this year, they'd still have to give up a fair amount in this deal as well. So let's say they include Austin Riley in this deal for now. You still need 34 coming back. So this is where you include Rosario. This is where I would include Hill. I did see a Langford for Hunter Green trade on here before. I don't think Cincinnati would do it. I think they would love to get Wyatt Langford. I think they would give us a massive package of pieces for him, but I don't think it would happen. How about a deal that would be something like Langford for Taj Bradley or Rasmussen and more? That would make some sense as well from Tampa Bay, but they're usually the team that likes to add multiple assets, not give up multiple assets and consolidate them into one player. They're the type that would take Rasmussen right now and divvy him up among 3 different assets. Kind of what our thought process is here for Langford. So remember, we got that Dasan Hill from the Twins. He would be in this deal. We'll symbolize that with the cash for now. So that's Dasan Hill. Interesting. It's not actually my phone buzzing. I think that's the mic. Anyway, we'll figure that out after our live anyway. But Dasan Hill, Rosario, and Young gets us to within 10 for Riley and Olsen. Young takes over at third for Riley. I would probably include Berger in this deal over at first. That frees up roughly $40 million for them to go after in free agency for starting pitching next year. They still have Chris Sale, which they could also flip, but if they move Riley and Olsen, I think they'd still need improvement in their offense, but this would certainly allow them to go after whatever depth move they need. Jake Berger has control. So does Josh Young, and they get a top 100 prospect out of it as well. You're close in this deal. You're also getting a top probably 200 prospect in Dasan Hill from the Minnesota Twins. Again, that's what the $10 million cash represents. This is kind of part 2 of the trades if we were the Rangers trying to build an ultra-competitive team right now. I think the Rangers would still need to add at least 6 to 8 more as far as value here. So 6 to 8, you could put it all in Dreiling right here to give them an outfielder for Acuna or for their left field spot for next season. I think Asuna would probably be more valuable to them, though, since he's already at the major league level. That gets them right there. And let's say they send Bader back in this deal. So let me go back to that 2.2 range. I'll just put Tommy Specht in there. That is Harrison Bader, by the way, not Specht. Well, they wouldn't want Harrison Bader. They would want a $2 million piece. Because Bader would not be that valuable to them as an expiring deal. So don't include Specht. Take him out. Or Bader in this deal. Cauley would make some sense. We just trade Foscue? I can't remember if we put Foscue in the other deal. But Duran would be an interesting one. Go back to page 1. Duran. And give him Dunning as well to give off a little bit more money from the Rangers. And another roster spot freed up. That's not bad. Remember, the cash basically signifies Dasan Hill from the Twins. Take out Dunning because I don't think this model would accept it. Validate the trade. Post it to the trade board. Let's go to my profile so we can see the trades together. All right. So part one, we take Wyatt Langford, Foscue, and Jock Peterson's deal. We turn them into Bader, Correa, Duran, Joe Ryan, Dasan Hill, and we get cash as well to kind of offset the amount from Carlos Correa. We still end up keeping Harrison Bader as a 4th, 5th outfielder type because we trade Alejandro Osuna in the next deal. But we get Matt Olson as our first baseman, Austin Riley as our third baseman. We give up a top 100 starting pitching prospect in Alejandro Rosario, Dasan Hill, who we just got from the Twins, who's a top 200 prospect, 18 years old, so good young pitching going to the Braves. They get Josh Young to fill in for Austin Riley. Obviously a down step, but at least gives them a professional hitter over there. And if he gets better at bats and takes care of his anxiety at the plate, it was at least what it appears to me as is his problem. He could be every bit as good as Austin Riley, but Austin Riley's contract is why he's so valuable more than anything else. Jake Berger, obviously in a down year, would take over at first base on a very cheap deal for them. But again, this frees up what? How much money are those two making next season? Just to kind of pull up the money here. 2026 for the Atlanta Braves. Those two guys are making $22 million in payroll, so $44 million. Let's go back to our trade here. Is it worth offloading $44 million to take on two top 200 pitching prospects, an outfielder that solves your issue in left? I don't know. The Braves probably say no to that one, the more I think about it. I think they would want a better piece than the combination of Young, Duran, Berger. I think they'd rather have one consolidated piece that's more valuable. Like a Josh Smith, but I'm not trading Josh Smith. Maybe a Royce Lewis. Say you put Young to the Twins along with, I don't know, another $4 million piece, say a Mitch Bratt. Get Royce Lewis, put him in the steal instead of Young and Berger. Maybe that would make it more interesting. I don't think so, though. I think they'd rather have this than that. Dasan Hill, Rosario, Osuna, and Young are the valuable pieces you get. Rosario, Hill, and Berger probably equal the value of Riley. Osuna and Young are pretty close for Olson. And Duran to kind of push it over the top. It's a very equal trade, I will say that. I mean, in an equal trade, I'd probably lean towards the side of the team that's selling to keep their assets. That's why I think if I'm the Braves, I'd want a little bit more. Say you threw in another 19-year-old pitching prospect, I'd probably say yes to the deal if I'm the Braves. The first deal, if I'm the Twins, I get off of the money of Correa. I lose 2 years remaining of Duran and Ryan, and I give up the future of Hill. And I give up $10 million for one season to basically for the rest of this year to equal out the money so Texas stays underneath the tax with the contracts they're taking on. In fact, if you even took Bader out and included $12 million instead of that, I think they'd still probably do it. And I think Texas would prefer that anyway. The biggest part for them is they get Wyatt Langford. If Texas included another small pitching prospect, I think they would probably say yes, guaranteed to this deal as well. But I think the value is right there for all three teams. It's very, very close. Now, in the end, you walk away losing Duran, Berger, Young, Osuna, Peterson, and Langford off of your roster, active roster, top or 20, your active roster on game day. You bring in Correa, Duran, Correa, Duran, Ryan, Olson, and Riley. I think you're certainly a better team to win this year. I think you're guaranteed at a run to the ALCS with that lineup and with that rotation, and especially with that bullpen. I think you have a very good chance to get to the World Series this year, and probably for the next 2 years after that, with Joe Ryan under contract, with DeGrom under contract, with Eovaldi under contract, Riley and Olson under contract, Carter getting better. Adolis Garcia would be the turnover in right field. You'd have to figure out something there long term. Catcher, still a bit of a black hole, but again, catcher is a down spot in all of baseball. Your rotation is pretty solid. You got to worry about the age of Eovaldi and DeGrom catching up to them. But you have Leiter still. You have Rocker still. You have Bradford still. And you still have held on to some of your top pitching prospects as well. Not a bad deal overall. But you diversified one asset at 63 and turned it into all of this. Those would be the two moves I'd make. I think they're perfect value for each other. But again, if I'm the selling team, I want to go to my fan base and say, we gave up this player because X. We don't want to say we, ended up having a very fair trade between the two sides. I do think they're very good trades. I do agree with you there, Gil. I hope CY watches this too. That'd be pretty cool. Hey, Chris Young, if you're watching, say hi. I'd love to hear from you. Not saying that you should take my ideas, but I am saying that, I appreciate you watching. All right, let's check in on some of the scores from around baseball right now. In fact, let me close this one so it updates a little faster. There we go. Rangers are back in front, 8-6. Wow, their offense is just scoring every couple of innings here. And Langford is up. 2 outs in the 7th. Let's see what the scoring looks like. Summary, scoring. We left it tied 6-6. With Higashioka getting a single and Langford scoring the last time. See, Corey Seager got on, and then Marcus Semien hit a home run, his 10th of the year. Looks like his offense is starting to come around. He's got 4 RBIs in the game. Good on him. Marcus Semien in an RBI spot is producing, which is what the thought process was basically for the last couple of years with him at the top of the lineup. The bottom of the lineup was getting on base, and he was driving them in. That's why his RBI numbers were so high as a leadoff hitter. But he certainly got out of the gates very poor, but good to see him getting back into the swing of things here. Now, I am curious how Seager got on, though. He was hit by the pitch. Yee. Come on, man. I think your Rangers heard the trade and don't want to be traded. Well, who knows? I mean, I really like the team as currently constructed. I thought the moves that they made in the offseason were made for the right reasons. The move for Berger made a lot of sense. Consolidate some of your assets for a cost-controlled piece. You consolidate Lowe's value, save the salary there and bring in a Jock Peterson, whose numbers in all rights should have been very good for them this year, but he has been terrible for them. If he comes back and does, I don't know, say he hits 240, 250, I'd say that would be great for what the Rangers are hoping for Jock Peterson the rest of the season. But before the season, I thought they would have been hoping for a 280, 290 hitter. There are only, 9 qualified guys who are hitting above 300 right now. We went on the rant last night about guys not hitting for average anymore, but, we'll see how the rest of this goes. Wyatt Langford working the count here. I like that. 2 stolen bases in the game, too, for Wyatt Langford. Showing his value today. Raised his average from, I believe, 232 before the, or 231 before the game to 236. It'll be an 8th pitch in this at bat. Brogdon was brought on to face him. Make it a 9th pitch coming. Full count here for Langford. This has kind of been the Wyatt Langford video. The good and bad of keeping or trading Wyatt Langford. The good, he does what he does tonight. 2 for 4. Looks like he struck out here swinging. 2 for 4 with a strikeout. Or is it 2 strikeouts now in the game? Yeah, he struck out twice. 2 stolen bases. Couple of runs scored. Pretty solid. Let's look at the pitching so far for Texas after Rocker. Armstrong done yeoman work. How many pitches has he thrown? Only 15? That's great news if you're a Rangers fan. You didn't have to burn multiple relievers to get this. Jeff Wilson with an update on John Gray in his relief outing, or in his rehab outing today. His fastball set 93 to 96. He was pitching very well in spring training before the injury. And good news there for him. In fact, I want to pull up these messages here. Allowed 1 run in 2 innings in his first rehab outing. Cole Drake followed with 1 run in 5 innings. We mentioned Cole Drake. He's having a great year at AA. Josh Young went 1 for 5. Kind of disappointing, honestly. He had a couple hits the other night, but I don't know. Here's a tweet from Brian Hawk. Aaron Boone said DJ LeMahieu was willing to begin working at third base again, but the position had been too physically demanding for him. There were lengthy discussions yesterday and today before LeMahieu, Boone, and with LeMahieu, Boone, and Cashman. LeMahieu didn't ask for his lease and is not happy with the outcome. No surprise. I mean, the Yankees have a chance to win this year. Booker getting his extension. Looks like they do pull Sean Armstrong. He was good in an inning and 2/3. First pitch, did he get a base hit? Fielding error by Jake Berger. Another error. The Rangers, a great defensive team so far this season. Not so much today. Not so much recently. That is a good trade. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. I try to put a lot of thought into these. I don't just like to throw up spam on the board or baloney on the ceiling or whatever and see if it sticks. It's got to make sense for both sides. And for Texas to give up Wyatt Langford, they're going to have to get multiple assets back, and it's got to make them better now, not in the future. Because Wyatt Langford would definitely be the better piece for the future. But if you can get for that same length of time, Riley and Olsen, and on top of that, you're getting Carlos Correa, even with a bad contract, as a 7th, 8th hitter in your lineup. I mean, looking at the trade that we did, what would your lineup look like? You'd have Smith 1, Seager 2. I'd probably put Olsen 3 or Riley 3. No, I put Riley 3, Olsen 4. 5, I'd put Simeon. 6, Carter. 7, Garcia. 8, Peterson. 9, catcher. I think I still have one more hole in my lineup with this, but you're still 1 to 7 deep. And I mean deep. Your center fielder is still probably after this trade, Evan Carter. In left field, you traded Ozuna. You could put Riley out there and put Smith over there at first, or over there at third. You could even do another small trade and bring in an outfielder like Ramon Laureano, or put Haggerty out there in left for defensive purposes. Give yourself another speed element down in the lineup. In fact, I'd probably do that. I'd probably put Haggerty out there in left. Yeah. John, welcome in. I'm late. Any chances for the Rangers to seriously consider Bregman? I just don't think the Red Sox are going to be selling at this year's deadline. They've done what they needed to do against the Rockies. I think they'll still take care of business going into the All-Star break. Their season will be decided in the weeks after the All-Star break before the deadline. 3 great series against playoff teams. And we'll see how they perform. Uh-oh. Rangers in trouble now. Webb came on. Allowed the first 2 runners to reach, 1 on an error, 1 on a single. Shanuel and then Trout, who already has 2 home runs in the game. And looks like the Ranger killer of old. Fly ball to shortstop, I'm guessing. Based off of the way the ball was tracked in the little field of play over here. Pops out to Corey Seager, yeah. Now you get a double play and you're out of the inning. Trout does ground into him, but we mentioned that the last time when he hit a 2-run home run. We saw how well that worked. Looks like there's another mound visit, so they're going to be bringing in somebody else. He's a right-handed hitter, so I'm going to guess Chris Martin is coming on. I have no idea who's working in the bullpen. I'm just guessing. Chris Martin. Milner, no. Garcia, no. Yeah, and it is Chris Martin. I know this team too well. I don't even have to know who's working in the bullpen. I know who's coming in to face Trout. Do I know Bruce Bochy or do I know Bruce Bochy? All right, while we wait for this game to get back underway, let's check in on a couple of the other scores real quick. Bottom of the ninth, Arizona still leads 8-2 now. And the Braves have extended their lead 9-2 over the A's. The only 2 games still going on besides this one. In case you guys are just joining us, we've been doing a lot of trades anyway today. If you guys follow along on baseballtradevalues.com, you don't even need an account there. You can like, thumbs up, thumbs down the trades. But if you guys want to go over there and do some thumbs up on these trades, I'd really appreciate it. Get some traction, and then we'll see if we get some more comments, some more feedback on these through their site, or you can comment here in our chat and just say hello. Let us know your team that you want us to make a trade for as well. You guys know I'm a Rangers fan, but we've been doing trades for everybody. We had a Mets request anyway for them to get a middle reliever Seventh, eighth inning guy to go in front of Diaz. We did a Bautista trade there. We talked about what it would take for the Blue Jays to get an ace, what they need to do at the deadline. Chris Sale was the move that I think would work best for them. But again, it's all about, is it worth it for Atlanta? In this trade, I don't think it would be. I think more likely would be trades for Zach Gallen or Merrill Kelly. Those trades you could make very easily. Doesn't cost a whole lot of prospect capital. I think a trade like this would be very close to working for a team like the Diamondbacks for a move like that. I don't think anybody should be trading for Sandy Alcantara, but we had a request to go to Houston, so we made a trade there. If the Yankees were to go after Acuna, Braves move on from Riley. I'm kind of surprised we got 2 downvotes for the Braves, because Jones, I think, fits perfectly over there at first base, probably in left field. Rice, again, first base, third base, first base catcher, outfield, and then a very young catcher there. Braves get a lot of value back. Same trade basically for Olsen, except you don't have to include Ben Rice in this deal. Instead, it's Ben Hess. We had another request for a Cubs trade for Alcantara. So remember, 20 years old and under prospects. That would basically include Rojas and another piece. Cardinals, if they wanted to add a starting pitcher, they could go for Merrill Kelly. Diamondbacks stay competitive by getting Graceffo back. Should the Rangers make a contract extension offer to Josh Smith? Great question. I like that one. Let's look and see what his deal currently has left on it, just to see if it's worth making an extension right now. Because he's a player that's valuable right now, but I'm not sure how many years he's going to be valuable for the Rangers. So the question is this long-term contract worth it? Because I think this is basically the peak of what he's worth right now. So he's got 3 years left after this season. He's making roughly 14 as far as value. So you could include, I don't know, say if you bought, say, 2 years of free agency from him, I think that would make it worth it. Offer him somewhere in the neighborhood of like a 5-year deal that eats up the 3 years of arbitration and then 2 years of free agency. Say 5 years, I don't know, $70 million, $75 million. That might be a little rich, but I think that's about the market rate for Josh Smith right now. I don't think I want to pay him into his mid-30s, but I think 32. Maybe a 6-year deal if you want to buy 3 years of it. I offer him, say, 6 years at $80 million total. 82. That'd probably be about my limit for Josh Smith. Because what he does bring is an invaluable, versatility, and brings me a lot of on base and brings me a high average when this team really doesn't have anybody who does that. I'm not willing to pay through the nose for it. I do realize that that is a valuable skill, but that's a valuable skill that I could easily replicate by going into my farm system and finding somebody to fill that role. Not saying they'd do it as well as him, but that they might grow into that same type of a player within a year. And so I don't necessarily need to pay through the nose for somebody who's already proven to be effective at it. I'll pay for what you're worth to me during that year, and I might pay for a couple of free agent years, but I'm not going beyond that. Let's see if Chris Martin was able to get the out, and it doesn't look like it. Is that a 2-run single there? Oh no, he did get Mike Trout to fly out to center. Rengifo and Neto advanced, and then Ward came on and got both runs home. Again, he's going to be probably a top 5 bat that's moved most realistically at the deadline. Unlikely that we see Bregman, Olsen, Riley, Acuna, any of these other pieces move, but he would be one piece I'd expect to move here at the deadline. Adele, who's had a good day, got an RBI earlier today. 1 for 3 at the plate so far. Jacob Webb was not crisp in his outing today. I'm surprised they didn't let Armstrong go for one more. Because through an inning and 2/3, he only threw 15 pitches, and they couldn't figure him out. And through the 7th, that's just a little early for Chris Martin. Anytime he's asked to do something not in his usual repertoire, he usually struggles for the Rangers. So, oh well. Brand new ball game. And does he finally get the third out? Looks like he does. Okay. So we go to the 8th, tied once again. Looks like it'll be Carter, Berger, and Higashioka. Carter struggling so far today. We'll see if he gets his first hit of the ball game and continues his hitting streak. I believe he's on a hitting streak again. All right. Let's do some more trade talk before we do our power rankings here in a little bit. Clear this out. Okay. Let's do another deal. How about... say we're not going to trade for the Rangers. We're not trading Langford. We want to go cheap, low cost, high impact moves. We want a high leverage reliever. We want maybe a starter to take out Kumar Rocker in the rotation, even though John Gray looks like he'll be back probably right after the All-Star break, maybe close to the trade deadline, somewhere in that range. We're looking for an impact bat to either the DH spot, third base, or first base. Can be utilized in any of those spots. So we don't have to necessarily go for a Eugenio Suarez or a Josh Naylor. We can go for anybody that can play any of those positions. So if I'm looking for a bat, and I'm not wanting to take on big salary, Angels, you could go Ward, but I want a bigger bat. I want somebody who's not going to cost a whole lot. Bregman would have been a nice piece if the Red Sox were selling, but they're not. Goodman at catcher would be a nice piece for the Rockies, but I think that would take literally everything the Rangers have in prospect capital to really get it done, so I don't think it's worth it to do it. The Royals, they don't really have anybody that moves the needle for me. Hicks from the Marlins, I'd rather stick with Higashioka and Heim. Orioles, O'Hearn doesn't move it enough for me. Cardinals with Helsley, that makes a lot of sense right now. As a closer. Not necessarily on the level of Duran or Clase or anybody like that, but that would be a very gettable piece. And it's not going to break your bank. Right now, I think if you included Dane Dunning going back to the Cardinals, as well as one minor league prospect like Isaac Tiger, I think that probably gets the deal done. That would be one direction you could go. Who else could you go after? Raisel Iglesias for the Braves. I don't think he's been good enough, and his salary's way too high. Nobody else really fits as far as a trade piece right now. Kenley Jansen from the Angels makes a little bit of sense. How much would he cost to bring in? -2 value, but the Rangers would want the Angels to pick up all $4 million of that. So if they went and got Kenley Jansen, trade between the two teams facing off right now. Say you include Jansen here. You include $4 million to the Rangers. Meanwhile, the Rangers sell you a couple of single-A prospects that have potential. Let's go surplus first, and then go to page 3. In this range here, Avery Weems could easily be on the Major League roster right now for the Angels as a bullpen arm. Not saying he'd be great, but he'd be something they could hope for. Hauver doesn't have a future for the Rangers, but he could easily be a fourth outfielder right now for them. And then as far as somebody to hope on, Anthony Gutierrez. And Brock Porter, maybe. They get two pieces to hope on. The Rangers get off of a couple of 40-man roster spots. Not bad. I'm sure they'd want something a little bit better than that, but that'd be something interesting. DeGrom, your 1, Evaldi, your 2, Ryan, your 3, Rocker or Leiter, your 4, plus a deep bullpen. You're forgetting Molly. Don't forget he's coming back at the All-Star break, or after the trade deadline, excuse me. He's been great this year. Leiter would be my 5, Molly 4, Ryan 3, Evo 2, DeGrom 1, and a very deep bullpen. I still would want somebody better than Chris Martin, but he chose the Rangers and gave him a discount for coming here, so I kind of feel beholden to keep him. But he's been coughing up some games, had some injury issues. Jacob Webb has issues earlier this season and looked like he was getting better, but today had a couple more issues. Those would be the 2 middle relief guys that I think if they wanted to bring in somebody else, they could flip those guys out or send them down or have them on the injured list or whatever. Cole Winn has been very good. I think he could take one of those spots internally. But if I'm looking for a middle reliever, externally, David Robertson's still out there on the scrap heap right now. Helsley, I think, would be a great 8th-inning guy for the Rangers. But I want that proven guy, Duran, at the back end of that bullpen, referencing our trade that we made earlier there. Looks like the Rangers went 1, 2, 3, pop out, fly out, and another pop out. Looks like the Rangers could be headed to another extra innings game. Yay! Well, we all know how much the Rangers love that the last 3 weeks. Mm. 8 runs and you still can't manage to go to the 9th winning the game. And why is that? Because you're starting a guy who's starting to show development, yes, at the major league level, but still showing that he needs some work, needs some time to learn some things. Kumar Rocker. You go to the bullpen. Sharon Armstrong comes in and lights out for you for an inning and 2/3. You don't want to burn him out for tomorrow's game or whatever the case is here. So you're like, okay, we'll go ahead and go to the bullpen and go to Jacob Webb, who's been good recently, so we should be fine. He struggles. You bring in Chris Martin, who's been struggling for a bit now ever since he came back from injury. Has had a couple of good outings, a couple of rough outings, I'll put it that way, allowing inherited runners to score. And we see more of the same today, with inherited runners coming in to tie the game in the 7th. Rangers go cold in the 8th with their 7-8-9 up. And out of the bottom half, Luke Jackson, who struggled his last time out against the Padres, he will face the 6, 7, 8 hitters here for the Angels. Moncada, Soler, and d'Arnaud. d'Arnaud has a home run in the game already today. If a runner gets on here, I would not be surprised if Texas goes to the bullpen quickly here with Jackson on the mound. Milner comes to mind as far as somebody they'd try to go to quickly. And if this thing goes to extras, expect Jacob Latz to get the work late. Garcia probably works the 9th, if I had to guess. That looks like a base hit. Yep. Ground ball to left. 1 on, nobody out. Maybe won't even get to extras at this point. 1 pitch, 1 hit. Soler, not exactly a fleet of foot guy, but he's 0 for 3, 204 average. Prodigious power. Slider in off the plate, ball 1. I think we'll do our power rankings show tomorrow night. I was kind of hoping this game would have already been over by now so we could go ahead and do the power rankings before midnight, but I've got a long day tomorrow at work, so we'll do it after we get off tomorrow. We'll do some trade talk first, then we'll do our power rankings show tomorrow night. And then we'll probably do one more power rankings show after all the games are concluded on Sunday, as kind of how everybody stacks up as they go into the All-Star break. Or should I just do one power ranking show at the end? I think we'll do it on Sunday. That makes more sense. We'll do our power ranking show on Sunday afternoon after all the games are final. The MLB draft will be that night. We'll go through the draft as well. That'll be fun. Turn it into kind of a 2-for-1 live. Well, 3-for-1. We'll talk power rankings, we'll talk MLB draft, and we'll talk trade deadline. That'll be Sunday's show. Usually I don't do Sunday shows because spending time with the family, but with the trade deadline coming up, we're going to be live every single... Oh my... Can I predict this game or can I predict this game? As long as you stay away from the homer, I said. And what does he give up? The 2-run home run. I don't understand the deployment of the bullpen in this game by Bruce Bochy. I understand the thought process of trying to keep Armstrong available, but he was very effective and working through these Los Angeles Angels hitters very well. Why would you not have left him on to finish things off in the 7th? He'd only thrown 15 pitches in an inning and 2/3. Instead, a game where you should be winning, yet again will go in the loss column because your bullpen, a couple of guys cough it up for you late. Your offense struggles in the games before it. Give up a walk-off walk in extras. Or was that in the 9th? One of the two anyway. But either way, late inning issues once again, and Jackson was their closer to start the year. I'm not against the idea of having him replaced on the roster by Cole Winn at this point. I think his spot in the bullpen, Martin's spot in the bullpen, and Jacob Webb probably the shakiest out of all of those guys. Milner's been nothing but a horse for the Rangers as long as they utilize him in the role that he was designed for. Jacob Latz has been great. Cole Winn, when he was in that 8th inning role, 7th inning role, he was very good, and the few times he was trusted to do it at the major league level. Robert Garcia, as long as he's in the 7th or 8th, is lights out. So this would have been a great spot for Robert Garcia. Still nobody out here in the bottom of the 8th as the Rangers once again are giving away a game. I know it's all part of baseball, and I know it's a 162-game season. Every team goes through times like these. But at a certain point, you just got to say, look, our pitching staff has been great. Our offense looks like it's finally coming around. We have a situation on the mound where Armstrong is taking care of business. And instead of sticking with that for another inning and then going with Garcia or Martin in the 8th, I'd probably guess Martin gets the job in the 8th. Garcia gets it in the 9th. Having your rockiness in the 9th inning, as you usually do with him. Instead, you end up going to Jacob Webb in the 7th. To me, he should be a part of your B bullpen, a game where you're behind 8-6. You need to get a couple of outs and keep the team in it. That's the role for him. He's not part of my A bullpen. Jackson is in that same role as the 7th, 8th inning guy in the games that you're trailing 8-6. He hasn't proven to be effective like he was earlier in the season. He's lost that A bullpen role for me. And Martin, when he gets the job, and usually in the 8th inning, a clean inning, he's fine. But when you ask him to do a little bit out of the norm, come in and close, ask him to go an inning and a third, ask him to come on early in the 7th inning in a presser situation, those situations he struggled. But when he gets the clean inning, like Jacob Latz earlier this year, he's fine. 2 away now. We go to the top of the order anyway, once again with Neto. Rangers will at least have 1, 2, 3 in the top of the 9th. They've scored more than enough to be able to win this game. There's no reason they should be losing 10-8. Wow. Is that another error? Nope. It's a single. And again, the Rangers, one of the top 3 defensive teams in the game this season, have 2 errors in the game as well. Just very un-Ranger-like baseball as they head into the break here. 2 steps back against the San Diego Padres and the Angels early in the season, or early in the series here. Big night last night in a kind of a wacky, crazy game. And then more of the same. Late inning struggles with high pressure situations. Not even a high pressure situation. 1 on, nobody out, and you give up a 2-run home run. 1 on, 1 out in the 7th inning, you give up a 2-run home run. How many home runs have they given up so far in this game? 5? Trout has 2 of them. Darno, Soler, so they got 4 home runs. 1 2-run homer. A solo shot. Another solo shot. And another 2-run home run. So 6 runs via the home run today. Meanwhile, Texas, Higashioka, a solo shot, and Simeon with 1 on. So 3 runs for Texas via the home run. They challenging the play over there at first, I guess? Is that a steal? Or a wild pitch? Neto's now in scoring position. Nope, stolen base. I still think the Rangers, even with a loss today, looking at where they are in this... Oh, they just scored again. Base hit to left, 11-8. I think with that run scoring, that this game's pretty much over. But you look at this wild card picture. Red Sox are going to go in on a nice winning streak here, I believe, into the All-Star break. So they'll be right there with the Mariners and the Rays for kind of that final 2 wild card spots. I think they'll be all in that mix. Twins, again, they're a very streaky team. They could easily go on a 10-game win streak and then follow it up with a 30-game losing streak. Those are kind of extremes, but that's kind of the team the Twins are this year. They just aren't very good, I'll put it that way. They have a lot of talent, but none of it's healthy right now as far as in the spots that they need it to be. And the guys that are having big years for them aren't getting the support around them to be consistent enough to win games. Negative run differential, yada, yada, yada. You know the rest about that from the Michael K stuff, from the Toronto Blue Jays, how that kind of indicates your ability to win those close games. Minnesota struggling in that regard. Meanwhile, they're tied with the Rangers in the standings for the time being. They will drop a half game back of the Twins with their loss against the Angels tonight. Angels will move into a tie with the Rangers at 3.5 games back with the Royals as well. They got a tough series against the Astros coming up this weekend before the All-Star break. I imagine that series goes split 2-2. Rangers do play the Astros pretty well, but I believe the series is in Houston. They will face DeGrom and Eovaldi in that series as well. I think Corbin's going to pitch in that series along with Jack Leiter. So Rangers' rotation is set up for that series. I imagine they'll get 2 of the 4, split, and then they'll head into the break. 3 games under 500, and they'll probably finish 4.5 games back of the wild card as they go into the All-Star break. That's not an insurmountable number with the pitching staff that they have. The 11 runs tonight certainly aren't going to help the Rangers' pitching numbers. They might start to drop, especially with those bullpen rankings after their performance this evening. All the more reason for them to try to reinvest in a high leverage reliever. That way you can utilize Garcia in the 8th inning role that he's designed for. Martin in that same 8th inning role if you need a righty versus a lefty. In the 7th inning, you got some combination of Milner and Armstrong, Webb. But for me, I'd rather have in the games you're losing to have Webb and Jackson taking up those spots. But we shall see. Leiter has more upside than Rocker, I would agree. Leiter just has so much more experience and has overcome issues in his development. Meanwhile, Rocker has only pitched 200 innings in 4 years. And it's just time for him to get some innings under his belt more than anything else. Get his conditioning under control a little bit better. We saw the pickle juice incident in Tampa Bay. Learning how to trust his stuff when he doesn't have it that day. Pushing through those issues that he has with trust in his command and finding a way to still be effective at the major league level. Heck, even at the minor league level first, before he gets to the majors, I think would do wonders for his development. Not saying that he couldn't be every bit as good or even better than Jack Leiter. I'm just saying right now, Leiter is leaps and bounds better of a pitcher than Kumar Rocker is right now, and that's because of the experience factor. He's had to go through those same issues. Issues with command, giving up all kinds of runs, issues with walks, issues with not getting strikeouts when he's used to getting them. He had to survive all of those issues in the minor leagues with everybody questioning his place in the minors for the Rangers. A lot of people on the radio in Dallas asking for the Rangers to move him while he still had value for something of value that they can utilize on the major league roster before Leiter had nothing left. Well, obviously the correct decision was made to hold on to Jack Leiter. He looks like a mid-rotation starter at this point for years to come for the Rangers. Probably a 3-4 starter. If he develops even more like the pitcher we expected him to be out of the draft, he could be a number 2, maybe even an ace down the line. But right now I see him more as a 2-3 starter, or as a 3-4 starter in the Rangers rotation. Kumar Rocker has all the talent in the world and could even be better than Jack Leiter. But right now he has to show the ability to pitch 5 innings first and be able to do so without needing to chug 3 things of pickle juice. But again, I don't want to harp too much on that because he is still a very young player. But the biggest part for me is the Rangers rushed him to the big leagues, not necessarily because of that he didn't show the talent that he could handle it, but that there was a better opportunity for him to continue to grow for his own growth down at the minor league level to handle more than just 200 innings. And so, that's where the difference for me comes. Let's check in on the game, see if this is still going. Ground out for Josh Smith, 1 out. Corey Seager. Let's see what he does. Looks like he got a base hit here. He is certainly heating up. 257. That average is going to go up with this base hit wherever it is. Looks like a double. Kenley Jansen on trying to get the save. Simeon next. We'll probably watch the remainder of this game together and kind of have some fun with a couple more trades before the end of the night. We just passed 3 hours and 30 minutes on this live, so I appreciate you guys joining us tonight. If you guys missed the conversation, we did a ton of trades once again today. Please feel free to dig back through the archives of this video, fast forward, rewind, wherever you are in the video, and just kind of check out some of the trades that we made. We had a bunch of trade requests anyway, dealing with Mets, Blue Jays, Cubs, Cardinals. We did a lot of Rangers talks as well. They reviewed it for a home run, it looks like, and said it was still a double. Okay. So he must have hit it at the very tip top of the wall or something. Semien already does have a home run in this game, so would make it interesting if he at least got on. Don't need a home run here, but 2 outs left. Uh-oh. Make it 1 out. I'm guessing a fly ball out or a ground out. Fly ball to center. Down to their final out. Not looking promising. If they can get it to Langford, they'll have a chance, I think. But that means Adolis is going to have to reach and Heim is going to have to reach to make this a game. I'm guessing Kenley Jensen's going to get a strikeout here if I had to guess. Veteran pitchers with the ability to throw the ball up in the zone, I think are going to have a lot of success against Adolis. That's the one hole in his swing right now. He always chases that pitch up. As long as you have that slider or cutter out, off the plate, I think you could easily get a strikeout here against Adolis. Not saying Adolis still isn't a great hitter and still didn't have potential to put it out of the ballpark, but if you know what you're doing in this situation, you should be able to get the out. And if you give up a walk, so be it. Deal with Jonah Heim. 0 for 4 with a strikeout already today. Waiting on deck. Rangers down to their final strike. Fouls off a cutter off the plate and away. We'll do it again. Appreciate you guys spending time with us. We'll be back live again tomorrow night. Be live around 9 o'clock tomorrow, so be sure to join our live as we'll go through all the latest trade rumors tomorrow. I'm sure we'll get a fresh batch. We had a bunch around Joe Smith today. Swing and a miss on a cutter in the zone, and the game is over 11-8. Angels take it and win the series against the Rangers. Rough series here for the Rangers. The last couple of series against the Padres and Angels, a lot of the issues that have been plaguing them all year long reared their ugly head once again and cost the Rangers a chance to win this one. But game is over. The other 2 games that were going on, let's see if they finish those games off. Let me close that first. All right, looks like all the games are now final. Braves did win 9-2, and Diamondbacks did win 8-2, and the Angels win 11-8. Rangers fall back to 45-48 on the year. Angels move up to 45-47. Or is it 46-47? Not sure if they've updated their standings yet. Let's see if they might have just done it. Oh, there they go, 45-47. They basically flip-flop places in the standings right now. Texas now trailing the Red Sox, Royals, Angels, and Twins. Chasing the Mariners for that final wild card spot. All right, let's just do 1 or 2 more trades just to kind of wrap up the evening. Now, we've done a bunch of buy Rangers trades. Let's see if they do sell. If you were in that situation, what would you do? How would you go about selling off some pieces of this roster? Say you go into the All-Star break, you lose 3 of 4 against Houston. You're now 5-6 games out of the final wild card spot. You come out of the All-Star break and you still play 500 ball. You're around 6 games out of the wild card. You probably should be selling at that point. So then the pieces that you're going to be looking to trade are guys that are not nailed down. Patrick Corbin having a great year, I think, could get you a nice piece in return. I think he'd be a nice add in the offseason once again as a low-cost free agent signing. Luke Jackson has had a decent year for the Rangers early this season. Maybe a team still sees him as an answer in some situations, and his contract is very cheap the rest of the way. Molly's had a great year so far, but he's not healthy. He's going to have to prove he's healthy when he comes back, but he's been very good this year. I think the Rangers are keeping him out out of an abundance of caution in some regard for as long as they're expected to keep him out. But that salary, the Rangers probably would have to pay down the majority of that to get a decent return back. Chris Martin wanted to finish his career in Texas. I find it hard to believe anyway, that the Rangers would trade him away. Maybe to Houston in the division, but it's very difficult to see a trade happening between those two teams. Milner was signed on a one-year deal. I think he'd be a great bullpen piece for teams needing a 6th, 7th, 8th inning pitcher. The Mets could be in that market. The Dodgers could be in that market. Pretty much every single team could be in that market there. Dane Dunning ain't going to go anywhere. Adolis Garcia. I think if you find a taker, the Milwaukee Brewers are supposedly the team that's hottest after him. Say you're the Texas Rangers. We'll go ahead and do the Milwaukee Brewers trade, since that's the team that's been rumored. Greg Amsinger was talking about that with the MLB Tonight people a couple of days ago anyway. What do you get for around $4 million as far as value here? $4 million. You're not getting anybody except maybe like Luke Adams would be like the high point. I think you'd be a little too rich there. I think you'd be looking more in this range. You could go Jorge Quintana. Shortstop prospect. You could go Juan Baez. They got a lot of good young players here, it looks like. Kind of in this grab bag range. Let me just throw them all in here for now. We're going to put Milner, since he was with the Brewers, goes back to Milwaukee. Try to sign him again in the offseason for that same role. I traded Adolis in this deal. I basically pay down the contract of Adolis that he has left. I think the Rangers are still getting the better end of this one. Anybody else of any value in this range? Jacob Webb, no. Berger, no. Duran, no. That's pretty much it. So you could probably get 3 of those guys. For Hobie Milner, Cash, and Garcia, you get 3 lottery tickets. Let's see if any of those lottery tickets are worth anything real quick. Brewers, full list. Baez was one of those names. High A hitting 221. Let's take Baez back out. Let's put Anderson back in. So Anderson and Fenelon. Fenelon, rookie ball, 200 average, but he's so young. You can take a risk on that. Who was the other one? None of the others are in the top 30 here. Say instead of Fenelon, you go for Kevin Iru. And Deturi, maybe? There you go. Validate trade, post trade. Sean, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Who signs DJ LeMahieu? Where does he end up? Well, once he goes through the process, I imagine he's going to latch on to the team that needs a little bit of offense. Rangers did sign Rowdy Tellez to a minor league deal. Honestly, he kind of fits the archetype of what the Rangers are looking for right now. A guy who can play a little bit of second base, a little bit of third base, a little bit of first base, a little DH, and that gives them a little bit of offense. He's hitting 266 on the year. Recently has kind of started expanding the zone a little bit. A lot of swing and miss lately, which is the reason why they were trying to figure out a solution there in New York for a period of time. It obviously didn't work, and they want to make an acquisition that's going to help him at third before the deadline. So they decided now is as good a time as any to go ahead and get him out of the clubhouse and free up a roster spot to whenever whenever they do add an acquisition there, they already have the spot freed up. Not that they were getting anything out of DJ LeMahieu at the moment anyway. But as far as other teams that could be a nice fit, Tigers I think could use him as kind of a depth piece for them. Not necessarily that they don't have good young players to go to, but kind of gives them a veteran in the clubhouse. It's kind of a Brad Miller on the Rangers when they won the World Series kind of a vibe, kind of that type of a player. I don't think the Dodgers would do it. I don't think the Mets would do it either. Trying to think of any of the contending teams that might be in the market. Phillies, I could see him as a bench player, but nothing more. I don't think they really need him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do something like that. Seattle's looking for offense any way they can find it. If they got him for literally a bag of potato chips on a minor league deal, if he figured things out offensively with a swing and miss that he's had struggles with recently, maybe they call him up and utilize him down the stretch. That's another fit there. Cubs could use him as kind of that utility infielder that we've been talking about. Isn't necessarily the biggest move for them. I think they'd look a little bit bigger first at the trade market. But if they can't find anybody to their liking cost-wise, DJ LeMahieu could be the type of player that they end up settling for. I think their assets should be used toward adding a starting pitcher and ace at the top of their rotation. And if they do that and decide not to trade for an infielder, utility guy to play over there at third or second or wherever they need him at, then DJ LeMahieu could kind of fit that void through free agency. All right. We just did one trade there. That'd be one trade if the Rangers did sell. We'll do one last one before we kind of finish up here. Steven, DJ is a statue that only can play second. I'm not arguing with you there. He has the flexibility from playing the positions in the past is more of what I'm talking about here. And that he has the ability to know where he's supposed to be lined up and, that kind of a thing. But the movements that he needs to take, but I'm not saying he's necessarily going to be a good defender at any of those positions, just that he's done it before in the past. But he wants to be a second baseman at this point, primarily. That's the way he came up. That's what he wants to be as he goes out. And I think he's going to find a situation where he's going to be utilized in a minor league role first, see if he solves the issues offensively, and then wherever he's able to get into a lineup and stick it to the Yankees, I think he would love that. Red Sox, I don't think have a home for him. Just trying to think of anybody who might have a spot for him. Tampa, I don't see as a fit. Who else are the wild card teams? The Yankees, he just got released from. Tigers, we just mentioned them as a maybe. Astros, I don't think would do it. They have too many players that already fit that archetype. Blue Jays could be interesting, but I really don't see the fit either. On the National League side, we just talked about the Phillies as just a bench-only player. Cubs is that utility player, but again, he wants to play second primarily, and he's best at that spot anyway at this point. Not that he's great at any of those. Cincinnati, maybe as a veteran bat, maybe. Hank, welcome in. Any trades today? Nothing really. We did see a trade in the middle of the Dodgers and Brewers game between the two teams during the game. I believe it was for Barrera anyway, sent for cash considerations. But that was really the only trade that I did see actually go through. But we are getting close to the All-Star break. The MLB draft is on Sunday. Instead of doing our power ranking show tonight, decided to move it from tonight or tomorrow till Sunday. That way we can kind of cover 3 different things during our live after the games are over on Sunday. We'll do our power rankings, updating everybody on how everybody did in the first half, where teams stand going into the All-Star break before trades happen during the All-Star break, as there always is 1 or 2. Usually the Sunday before the All-Star break, there's 1 trade or 2 of significance. MLB draft will be going on, and then we'll break down all the rumors around the MLB trade deadline as well. Posted a video about DJ LeMahieu today when that news did break. Got a few videos made for you guys that are in the can, ready to be released in the next couple of days. One dealing with Joe Ryan and the pursuit of him by the Boston Red Sox and how Minnesota may kickstart their rebuild process with Joe Ryan. We've got a couple videos coming out as well about the Seattle Mariners and the Atlanta Braves and their trade detail, their ways that they can improve via trade or trade some pieces away. So, got a few videos ready to go. Those will be coming out in the next couple of days. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for all the thumbs up at the bottom of our video right now. Really do appreciate those. And we'll be back live again tomorrow night around 9 o'clock. Appreciate you guys spending time with us. 4-hour-long live today. Thank you guys so much for having fun with me, talking some trades. We did some crazy deals today. I invite you guys to check them out. We kind of had a couple of questions. One was kind of a longer one that we did was the, if I was the GM of the Rangers, what would I do to try to compete right now and win? And we kind of started with Wyatt Langford. I'll let you guys look back in our video and see what we ended up doing and see what you guys think. But appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow at 9.